Okay, good evening. This is a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee to review the fiscal 22's budget on March 9th, 2021 at 6 p.m. Please ask if anybody is recording this meeting and announce that the cable is taping this meeting. In accordance with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, general law, chapter 30A, section 20, relating to the COVID-19 outbreak emergency, the March 9th, 2021 public meeting of the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee shall be physically closed to the public to avoid group congregation. However, to view this meeting in progress, please go to facebook.com/LakeCAM. You do not need a Facebook account to view this meeting. This meeting will be recorded and available to viewed at a later date at LakeCAM.tv. As a preliminary matter, my name is Rich LakeCAM. I'm the chairman of the Board of Selectmen. Permit me to confirm all members of the staff and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Leah Fabian. Present. Brian Day.
Present.
And as far as the staff is concerned, we have Tracy, Craig McGee, executive assistant.
Present.
We have who we got here? We got Todd Hassett, the town accountant. We have Angela, who's our treasurer collector, and George. You need to call your meeting to order, please.
6:02 on March 9th, opening our meeting. I'll do a quick roll call. Darren Beals.
Present.
Larry Constant.
Present.
Adam Lynch.
Present.
And that's all we have for today. Thank you.
Okay. This is an open meeting of the Lakeville Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee as being conducted remotely consistent with the governor's executive order of March 12th, 2020, due to the COVID state of emergency in the Commonwealth, due to the outbreak of COVID-19 virus. Now, to mitigate the transmission of COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in publicly accessible physical locations. Further, all members of the public body are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order which you find posted in the agenda materials for this meeting allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely as long as they have reasonable access and is afforded to, so that the public can view along with the deliberations of the meeting. Okay. Myself a little organized here. So if everybody would please go to the first summary page, which is a summary of the budget. Todd Hassett, our town accountant, is going to give us an overview of the budget.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. What I was hoping to do over the next few minutes was give you an overview of what you have before you. You each should have a budget binder issued by the Selectman's office a week or so ago. And I will tell you, we'll periodically provide you updates. There are still a handful of things that are in play that may change as we work our way through the budget process. And we'll keep those updates coming to you as we have them. So tonight, I just want to give you an overview of what you have in your binder. First, the summary section in the front provides a snapshot, a 5-year history of our budget sources and uses for both our operating budget and our capital plan. And as you'll see in the far right column, we are presenting you initially with a balanced budget for FY22. Though, as I mentioned, there are a few items that are still being worked out, which we'll discuss throughout the next 2 evenings. So at a high level, the sources of funds that we're utilizing or we have available, as you know, our primary source of recurring revenue is property taxes. And we're allowed to raise the prior year tax levy by 2.5% under state law. And for Lakeville, that represents just over $600,000 of new tax revenue from the existing tax base from the prior year. In addition, we've had some preliminary estimates from the Board of Assessors and their chief appraiser, who anticipate just under $400,000 of new tax revenue for what's referred to as new growth as a result of new construction in the community, both additions or new construction, residential, commercial, and so forth. That represents about 1.6% tax increase. We also have a handful of voter-approved debt exclusions, which over a period of years, the voters have elected to agree to pay additional property taxes for debt service associated with specific acquisitions or projects. Most notably, the recent one that was added this year related to the new police station. We also have the final few years of funding for the library and the senior center. Those will be rolling off. And the thing about debt exclusions is when the debt service is paid, the tax increase goes away, if you will, unlike a statutory override that would be a permanent increase to the levy. At this time, we're anticipating about $70,000 net from state and county revenues, net of our assessments and charges. This is based on Governor Baker's budget that was released at the end of January. So it's relatively flat. We do have one line item within, and we've provided in the summary section, you'll see a history of both the state receipts and the state assessments going back a number of years for your reference. Most of the line items are fairly steady and reliable, if you will. We do have, unlike many communities, we do have what's referred to as a smart growth line item, which is a budget capped at the state level, and it's distributed based on the communities that are participating in the program. And over the recent years, last year, for example, we actually, as a result of that, took in less revenue than was estimated. This year, I'm pleased to tell you, we just recently received our state payment and it actually exceeded the estimate. But most of these lines, the actuals come in pretty close to budget. And the state budget, as you know, this year took quite a while to settle out, just before we set our tax rate in November, as a matter of fact. But typically, we're looking at the state budget not being available to cities and towns until about early July. So we go into town meeting with an estimate. Right now, the best estimate we have is Governor Baker's budget. Again, just a modest increase for Lakeville. And then the third major recurring source of revenue for us is local receipts. And this is our revenues from motor vehicle excise tax, from departmental licenses and permits and fees, investment earnings. We do have a new line item introduced this year. And again, there's an exhibit in the summary section where you can see what major categories make up local receipts. But we do have the first introduction of some cannabis-related revenue. And in working with the selectmen, we want to be very careful about how we allocate those funds. As you can imagine, they may vary year to year and may level out as that market gets saturated in the next few years. And so we're anticipating some lines are not doing quite as well. Our motor excise is off a little bit. Our investment earnings are down due to the lower interest rates that we're getting right now. On the other hand, the cannabis is a new increase. And overall, right now we're projecting just over a 5% increase to local revenues to support recurring budgetary needs. In addition, we have historically funded much of our capital or non-recurring or article requests through what I'll refer to as non-recurring sources, things like our free cash, the enterprise fund retained earnings, our reserves, which I'll talk about a little more later. We have certain debt service that relates to septic loan improvements, and those are paid back by homeowners, and we use those funds to pay the debt so that there's no burden on the taxpayers. Overlay surplus, and with our capital plan, as capital projects are completed, if there are residual balances, we're looking to repurpose those balances for new purposes. And lastly, on occasion at town meeting, we will ask for an authorization to borrow funds, typically for a large project like the police station. And so what you'll have before you for the upcoming town meeting is just one request related to borrowing, and that would be for the replacement of one of the ambulances for the fire department. And we'll talk about that when we get to the capital plan. And the major uses of the funds, those various recurring and non-recurring funds, of course, the largest is our operating budget, which I'll talk about a little more, give you at least a high-level overview of what you have. There are state and county charges. We don't just get state aid, but there are charges for certain state and county services. And that actually does not go through town meeting. That's part of the tax rate setting process. So we do account for those as part of our sources and uses exercise. The Board of Assessors also targets a modest amount. It's around 1% of the tax levy for statutory exemptions and abatements on property values. And typically, we've been on the lower side of the assessors. They've done a good job of keeping that, the need for those funds down. Again, that's established as the tax rate is set. It does not go through a vote of town meeting. And in addition to our operating budget, we have a 5-year capital plan before you that still needs a little bit of work, but we'll talk about that a bit later. And we've come up with some proposed funding for next year's portion of the 5-year plan. We do have 2 enterprise funds for the park operation and the transfer station for our solid waste program. And we have had from time to time the need to subsidize one or both of those programs from the general fund where their program revenues have not been sufficient to cover their program costs. And then we'll also be recommending to you, to the town, to consider transferring some funds to put into a couple of our reserves for future needs. The Post-Employment Benefits Trust largely for retiree health care liability, and our capital and debt stabilization fund as we look ahead to future capital needs. We're finding it's prudent to set some funds aside now to offset some spikes in future year capital projects. With respect to the operating budget for FY22, I just want to give you some highlights on what you're going to be seeing throughout the documents. With respect to personnel, the salaries and wages, which, as you know, is a major portion of the overall town budget. We're in the middle of a 3-year collective bargaining agreement with all of the town unions, so they're all settled, and those amounts are in the budgets before you. step increases, cost of living, and the various economic components in each of the CBAs. The non-union staff, the Board of Selectmen just worked through most of the changes for those folks last night. So it's not in the individual departments. We do have a placeholder that will be, so we think we've accounted for most of that. And so when we give you a future version of the budget, we'll distribute some of that for the non-union personnel. We've had within the entire town operating budget 2 position reclassifications as compared to FY21. We anticipate 3 retirements, 1 in the fire department and 2 in the public library. In the selectmen's budget, you'll notice the introduction of a new position, town planner. And that the cost for that is somewhat offset by the reduction or proposed reduction of the town coordinator position. We will also in the new year be having, the board will be appointing its first treasurer collector. As you know, the town voted to change from an elected treasurer collector to an appointed, and Angela's with us tonight. She's serving as our interim treasurer, but we'll be going through a process. So in FY22, there'll be an appointed treasurer, which is in the budget in lieu of the elected position. Also in the fire budget, it's important to note to you that for the last nearly year and through this coming December, the board did add 2 temporary firefighter positions to help with the COVID pandemic. And the fire chief has made a very strong case for the need for these positions going forward. So we're proposing that the town fund 2 permanent firefighter positions beginning January 1st or mid fiscal year. So we'd have the 50% of the impact of it in FY22, and the balance of the impact of those 2 positions would be in FY23. And lastly, in the highway department in Public Works, we have, the board has approved an additional full-time laborer position, and most of the funding for this position came out of the part-time labor line in the highway budget. But that would be a new permanent full-time position. So that's pretty much it for salaries. So as far as new positions, the 2 firefighters mid-year, 1 highway laborer, and the town planner in lieu of the town coordinator position. With respect to the operating expenses.
Excuse me, Todd.
Yes.
Can I come in just for a second?
Sure.
Going back to the marijuana receipts,
Yes.
is that in line with what we had projected when this?
The town planner in lieu of the town coordinator.
Sorry, there's feedback.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the marijuana receipts, is that in line with what we were projecting when this idea came up, or are we below what we expected, above? Can you speak to that?
I can speak a bit, and then Chairman LaCamera may add to it. But at this, in total, in answer to your question, it's below what we're anticipating. But some of the entities are still, getting up and running. So the way we're allowed by the state to introduce this revenue is they want to see proof, if you will, that we've brought in some revenue. So we've actually had some come in this year, which will flow to our next free cash certification. But we do anticipate when the others are all through full build out and operational, we do anticipate additional revenue in future years. And hopefully, in all likelihood, next year, our actuals will exceed the budget. And the other point I would just make about this, Darren, is that for this first year, again, this is new for us, and we want to be careful. So we're estimating 150,000, which you'll see when you look at the local receipt page, And essentially, at least to my way of thinking, what we're doing is we're going to propose that half of that be transferred to the Capital and Debt Stabilization Fund, or about 75,000. And the other half, you know, I guess it's up to you. In my mind, what we're doing is that's how we're paying for the first 6 months of the 2 firefighter positions. But we do anticipate more revenue going forward, but we want to be strategic about how the town utilizes those revenues.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay. With respect to the operating expenses that you have, I just want to again highlight a few things that may be different or of interest. With respect to our information technology budget, you'll notice about a 7% increase to the budget. But what I can tell you is that Selectman Day has done a yeoman's job, you know, tearing apart all of our needs and working with the current service provider to really come up with a very detailed and supportive program for technology. And this is real focus of the board going forward. We do have, you'll see an increase in the independent audit expenses, which relate to 2 things. One is we have a new 3-year contract. So it's going up about $2,000 with respect to the annual financial audit. And then because of all of the federal funds that we've been dealing with respect to COVID-19, the town is going to be receiving federal funds at a threshold that requires us to have additional audit work done and a separate report issued to the federal government. And that is an additional $5,000. We'll likely see that same cost the following year as well. And then in all likelihood, our federal funds annually will drop back down below the threshold. Also in the human resources budget, which as you know was a new budget this year, you'll see some increase in the payroll system line, and the town is considering making improvements and changes to its payroll. And so Clorinda may talk a little more to that when you speak with her later. But that's a possible change, not big dollars, but something worth highlighting. We also have, like most years, we have pending final assessments from our regional school districts, Freetown, Lakeville, and Old Colony Vocational. So those are in play. And what you see before you in this front end of the book is we've put in placeholders for what we believe the town can afford. The requests from the region may exceed that at this time, but they're still working through their budget. That's, you know, both towns, Freetown and Lakeville, need to be able to afford. So that's something that's going to be ongoing for a little bit as we work through the process. With respect to employee benefits, sort of good and bad news for 22. You know, typically we've really struggled with increases in group health insurance. This coming year, we're pleased to tell you that the group insurance costs look to be very moderate, very modest. And the final rates haven't been set yet, but they should be set within the next month. And we expect that what you have before you should more than cover those rates. The bad side on the benefits is that our pension liability has not gone down as much as we had hoped at this point. We participate in a county system. They just had a new actuarial study released and approved new funding schedule and rates for all of the member units. And so we're looking at a 8% per year increase every year through FY28. And the goal is that the system will be fully funded by 2030, at which time we're hoping some or all of Lakeville's contribution, the employer contribution, can be shifted toward the post-employment benefit liability for healthcare costs. But that's, so it's, you know, some good and bad. The increase for FY23 is about 100,000 for pensions. They issue these in 2-year increments, so we already know what the FY23 assessment is likely to be. And then with respect to debt service, you'll see our debt is down slightly. We do have a handful of pay downs scheduled, and a lot of our debt, as you will see, we've put in the memo column to the right. When certain issues mature, you'll notice that much of our debt is maturing quickly. We do have, as I mentioned earlier, the police station project, which is a new piece of relatively new debt, and that's excluded by the voters. We do have some additional police station related debt that's temporary right now. It's about $390,000 that we'll need to sort out how we're going to finance. And that was really to do the final aspects of the project around communications and technology and a lot of the equipment needs at the station. And we do have new debt, as I mentioned, we're asking the town to consider replacing the ambulance, one of our ambulances. And last year, the town approved some funds for related to reconstruction of Route 79, which is tied in with a federal program. So we'll only be paying some of the upfront, if you will, soft costs, and then there'll be federal money to support most of the construction, which is a major project, a real good thing for the community. So again, high level, what you have before you tonight, the general government budgets proposed are up 1.33%. Public safety is up 3.36%. Public works, 3.15%. Human services, just over 2.5%. Culture and recreation is level funded. And that whole entire group of sort of non-educational departmental budgets in total is up 2.58%. The educational assessments for the 2 regions I mentioned, plus Bristol County Agricultural School, what we have in the package as far as what we're recommending is up 4.26% in total for all education. It's notable that with respect to the county Aggie school, we only have about 12 students, Lakeville students that attend, but they have a major capital improvement that we learned not too long ago is going to be financed on a per pupil allocation, which is close to $6,000 per year per student. So that's, even though it's a smaller part of our overall education expense, we'll be adding close to $60,000 related to the capital improvement for the facilities at Bristol Aggie. The debt service, as I mentioned, is down a bit. It's down just about 5% as compared to the current year. And what we've got to be careful about here is that's a sort of a good news that the debt's going down, but as we have future capital needs, we want to make sure we have the ability to, not necessarily grow the debt budget, but backfill as things mature and maintain some level of ability to pay for debt within our operating budget and not have to always seek a debt exclusion. Certainly we will for large projects. And then the last major functional area of our budget, employee benefits and insurance, overall is up 1.72%. So in its entirety, what we have before you is a proposed general fund budget at just over 3.1% increase. The town also considers votes separately after the general fund. We typically then vote the 2 enterprise funds, the park and the solid waste enterprises. And as you know, this year in particular has been really challenging for the park operation due to the pandemic. We're very concerned about getting through this year solvent, if you will. We did ask the fall town meeting to subsidize the program about $50,000. We're looking at an unbalanced proposed budget from the Park Commission at this point, with in addition, about 118,000 of capital requests, which we would be looking to subsidize. But there's also an operating gap, which we'll need to work through. So that's one of the pending things as we work through the budget. That gap is about $57,000. They do have some modest retained earnings. They have about 53,000 in retained earnings. So it sounds like we could almost make it work, but the concern is we've got to make sure we can get out of this year first. So when we get together and talk about the third quarter results, maybe in April, that would be a good time to maybe, I can update you further on that. With respect to the solid waste program, we've historically subsidized this. It's about a $400,000 a year program. We've typically subsidized it at about $100,000 a year. This year, we're proposing a $95,000 subsidy. They have very modest 45,000 left in their retained earnings. And if you'll recall at our most recent town meeting, we had the need to replace the loader for 162,000, and that came all from their retained earnings. So they did have about 200,000 in retained earnings, but we were able to purchase the new loader, which was an unexpected expense through the fall town meeting. So they're holding their own. The board will be working with the Public Works Director on looking at fees and how the participation in the program may work going forward. There's some issues that I know that Franklin may even mention when we talk about his budget later, that he's going to be working through with the Board of Selectmen. But they're holding their own. It's really the park operation that's a challenge this year and next. We do have, toward the back of your book, you'll see a 2 or 3 page 5-year plan for the capital through the FY22 through 26. And what we have before you for next year is 1.24 million. They may not all, pass as we go through, but we have come up with a way to fund all of these. And it's essentially about 400,000 of this 1.2 million is facility related. Again, we'll talk about it in more detail later, but it has to do with looking at the existing fire station and town hall, doing some renovations to the old library. The lease there has matured, and the board is looking at repurposing that for public use. And the Park Commission has a number of, I think about 118,000 of 3 or 4 facility related repairs and needs that they've identified. About 667,000 of the 1.2 million relates to vehicles and equipment and technology, police cruiser replacement, which we do every year. The ambulance replacement, which I mentioned to you, that will be a borrowing. So of the 667, we're not outlaying all of that or funding all of it. About 3.25, I think it is, or 375 for the ambulance. There's some public works equipment, and as I say, the beginning of some technology improvements that Selectman Day has been instrumental in setting in motion. Lastly, we are trying to advocate for annual local support for roadway improvements. As you know, we do participate in the state's so-called Chapter 90 program, where the state funds a certain amount of roadway improvements, but that's not enough to service all of the community, all of the the roadways in town and keep them at a certain level. So we're hoping to introduce through the capital plan an annual line for roadway improvements. Right now, we've got that set at $150,000 for next year. Ideally, that level should be more like 300,000, but we don't feel we have the resources at this time to go all that way in the first year. And then there's a modest $30,000 request that has to do with the historic preservation plan. So that doesn't really fit into facilities or equipment. So that's quickly the $1.2 million capital plan requests. And in addition, as I mentioned, we're recommending that $100,000 be transferred from our free cash into our post-employment benefits, so-called OPEB trust. This is for future our healthcare liability. Currently the balance in that trust is about 1.8 million. The actuary has suggested we should be annually contributing just over 300,000 per year. We're not able to do that right now. And as I mentioned, when we fully fund our pension liability, we'll have the ability to shift some of those dollars that those appropriations without increasing the budget from pension toward healthcare. We have about just over $1 million in the town's general stabilization fund. That's something that the credit rating folks look to expect to see about 5% of your operating budget in that type of a reserve. We're a little bit below that. However, we do have a second stabilization fund, which we call the Debt and Capital Stabilization Fund, and that's currently sitting at about 1.125 million. And we're suggesting adding 250,000 to that fund because as when you look at the multi-year capital plan, you'll see there's some large items in the next few years for the town to consider. And we're hoping, again, to sort of mitigate the impact of those costs. And when I answered Darren's question, of the 250, about 75,000 will be presented as from taxation, which is really the cannabis revenue. And the remaining 175 would be from free cash. In addition, I mentioned that each of the enterprises has a modest retained earnings, which we may or may not need to tap to get through 22. And we also do have remaining about $395,000 in a reserve from the sale of the water operations to the city of Taunton a few years ago, which you may recall. And we have reserved for future capital needs, whether it's infrastructure or whatever the town, however the town sees best fit to utilize those one-time funds. So going into town meeting, we have $1,079,000 in free cash available for the town meeting. We're anticipating up to $105,000 may be needed at the special town meeting, which are to cover a couple of prior year bills and the possible need to supplement the FY21 budget for snow removal and a few other expense areas. That's something we'll probably want to talk with the FinCom a little more about as we go along, because I think some of it we can deal with through your reserve fund rather than town meeting, but we'll I think jointly discuss that at one of your future meetings. And then at the annual town meeting, we're proposing to utilize $953,000 of free cash, $678,000 toward that $1.2 million capital plan, $100,000 to the OPEB trust for future healthcare costs, and $175,000 to the Debt and Capital Stabilization Fund, which would leave just under $22,000 unappropriated should town meeting follow what I just outlined. So in summary, I'm pleased to let you know that we're giving you a draft balanced budget. There are some things in play that some will fall favorably and some maybe not so favorably. We're still watching new growth. State aid could move favorably or not. The education assessments are really key to making this all work, and those are still being worked out by their respective school committees. I know in the case of Freetown Lakeville, they've got their healthcare costs. They were just getting new numbers, which we're thinking are going to be favorable. And they also have, I believe, their transportation bid that's either come in or due soon. So we're anticipating they're going to get a few nice breaks that will allow them to reduce the assessment without impacting services. On the debt service front, we've got pretty much everything in the debt budget with the exception of how we're going to handle that last piece for the police station. We do have an interest payment built into the budget for that, and how the Route 79 project rolls out. So it's possible although they're both excluded projects, so if we do have to increase the debt budget, there will be a corresponding increase to available tax revenue. The park operation is a challenge for us to get that sorted out and balanced. And there are, as I mentioned, a few salary and wage items that we're just working through for some of the non-union staff that should be settled out in the next 2 weeks. And then Selectman Camera can brief you if there are any articles. The articles were just due to us, and I'm not sure that there are any financial articles submitted by anyone, but that could also, require some attention, financial attention. So I look forward to working with you, and thank you for your time.
Thanks, Todd.
Thanks, Todd.
There is no financial articles that have been submitted. So that is not a concern. So does anybody have any questions for Todd before we go on to the individual budgets, or?
No. I'd just like to thank Todd for his amazing summary as usual and getting through all of that without one drink of water. I would have been dying by the end of that. So thank you, Todd. It's been a pleasure working through you with this process.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, excuse me. Somebody else have a question? No? Okay. All right. So now we're going to go on and we're going to talk about the Board of Selectmen's budgets, which include the town accountant, the treasurer collector, animal control, legal services, information technology, town office, and fire station. So if you go to your general government tab, the first one is Department 122, which is the Board of Selectmen. As far as the Board of Selectmen's budget is concerned, as Todd already mentioned, we're proposing to hire a new town planner at about $80,000 a year. And then at the same time, we've eliminated the town coordinator's position. And in its place, we've hired a part-time clerical staff to pick up some of those responsibilities. As far as everything else in the budget for the selectmen, there's really basically no changes having to do with the expense items. So if anybody has any questions for the Board of Selectmen.
I have one, Mr. Chair. I guess I was just surprised to see the planner added and the coordinator removed. I don't remember us discussing that. It's possible I simply have forgotten at this point. With the new town administrator coming in, I mean, would we want to entertain the town planner as a new line entirely, hold on to the other role, and maybe that turns into an assistant town administrator or something in the future, simply so we have it kind of put aside should we need it?
We can't fund it, Brian. We don't have enough money to fund it. And we decided that the town coordinator position, if you recall, many months ago, was going to be replaced by a clerical person to fill that role.
I don't remember that part of the discussion, but I do remember getting the part-timer in place for sure, which has been very helpful. Question for Todd, it looks like we're reusing the same account number. Would that be normal? If this is a new position, should it be a new account number so we can?
Yeah, it will likely be a new one, Brian, when we flow this through. Also the question may be, does it belong under the Board of Selectmen, or should this be in the planning board section of general government. But yeah, you're right. We'll likely, when we put it into the system, we'll assign a different number.
Okay.
Yes.
Actually, Todd, the town planner is going to report to the town administrator.
Okay, right, sure.
It's still under discussion, I believe. I don't think we've had any of these discussions yet.
I want to jump in too and say that I thought that it would be under the planning budget. And I don't recall voting out. I just want to make sure we dot all our i's and cross all our t's with the whole. I haven't seen anything. I mean, Clorinda did send me a few town planner job descriptions, but I haven't really seen a whole lot. I mean, I think we're moving. I know we need to get a planner. I'm not opposed to a planner. I just want to be sure that we get there in the right and with all the right paperwork.
Yeah, I think I saw the job description came across on the 6th for the first time. I don't remember us discussing that.
We did discuss hiring a town planner, right?
The idea, absolutely.
The idea,
Okay.
yeah,
So-
but I don't know that we ever voted on it.
And we haven't voted on the job description yet.
Right,
But we're going to be meeting with the planning board at 8:30, and we're going to be talking about the town planner and the responsibilities. So everybody has input as far as the job description is concerned. If you recall, when we met with the master plan committee, we said we were committed to hiring a town planner, right?
At some point.
yeah,
I think that's Leah and I's point, is this is just a bit of a surprise to see it in the budget book and not know it was coming.
I mean, I disagree with you, Brian. I'm sorry. We had a lot of conversation about that, about hiring a town planner.
I mean, we did, but we definitely had the conversation. I know we had the conversation and, but we may have even discussed using that money for that, but I just want to make sure that we're doing everything the way that we're supposed to be. And I'm actually surprised that it's in the selectmen's budget too. I shouldn't have assumed. I guess I should have asked. I thought it would have gone either, I don't know, planning board or whatever. So it's my first time doing a planner. So.
But we do agree that the town planner should report to the town administrator, right?
I'm not ready to make any decision on that yet.
Yeah,
That's-
the last time we talked to the planning board, they were still on the fence about using a consulting firm, so.
But Leah and Brian, that's why we're meeting with the planning board at 8:30, is to discuss this position and the responsibilities and the job description for this. No decision has been made as far as the job description is concerned, because it has to be reviewed and reviewed by the Board of Selectmen, right?
Right,
It hasn't been presented to the board to review the job description at this point.
I look forward to that conversation. I think our point is that this is being presented to us as if it was a done deal, and perhaps it is not. Not that we're against it. We have both said we would like to see this position. It's how we work through it. I mean, I don't know where the 80,000 came from. Is that part-time, full-time? Did we get some surveys back
It's
showing that?
full-time, it's a full-time position. Yeah, Kalinda, we looked at job descriptions and current positions in the market today to come up with that number. This is only a placeholder now. This is not, you have to still vote on this to say whether we're going to do it or not. But to say that we didn't discuss it, we discussed it many times.
no, we're not saying we didn't discuss it, Mr. Chair, we're just saying that I was surprised to see, I was actually more surprised to see it under the selectmen's budget, so I figured it would have gone under somewhere else, not under the selectmen, so, but it's fine, if that's what we're discussing with the planning board, we'll talk to them about it, and then we can make our decisions. It's like I said, though, I don't want to leave unfinished business, like if we should have made a motion to get rid of the town coordinator position, or if it just sits on the back burner, and vote to have any money transferred, or if we can just do it all as one. So
I mean, that position is sat unfilled for
a year,
2 years, 1 year, 2 years
year.
now.
one
Right.
year, I think.
That money could have been used elsewhere. They're welcome to discussion, absolutely. I guess would have liked a little more heads up that it was coming. But at least the numbers are
I'm
calculated.
sorry, I disagree.
Bottom line.
There was a big discussion about the town coordinator, that we weren't replacing the town coordinator.
I'll have to go back and watch the meeting. I apologize. I don't remember all of them then.
If we were gonna replace the position, why haven't we hired somebody?
I asked that last year when there was nobody in the position.
We didn't do it.
All right, well, we can move on. There's more discussion to come.
Yep.
At least the numbers baked into the overall.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions on the selectmen's budget? I assume nobody has any questions on the finance committee's budget of $100, $400.
No, we're good.
Okay, thanks. Anybody have any question on the $150,000 for the reserve fund? Hey, Todd, did you want to talk about the town accountant's office?
Sure. So the proposed budget is up 1.6%. There's a full-time staff position, senior position, my position, and modest expenses for some training for the assistant and just really office-related expenses. No change, really.
Anybody got any questions on the accounting budget?
Yeah, Todd, am I missing your salary?
It's under financial services and the expense side. It's a contractual, it's not an employee. I'm not an employee.
Okay.
No benefits, et cetera. Yeah,
Okay, thanks.
sure.
Okay, going on to the, on page number 3, the treasurer's collector. Angela, Todd, did you want to talk about that budget and what we're doing going forward?
So Todd, I don't have the treasurer collector salary that was budgeted.
Oh, I apologize. It's 85,000.
So if you look at the budget, basically it's just the regular step increases for the assistant treasurer collector and the clerk. And then you have below with the regular expenses, the computer expenses, the budget for 21 wasn't quite high enough, so I bumped it up 2,000 for 22. And that is the same instance with the postage and printing, based on what we've spent through December. I had to bump that up.
And just as a follow-up, when you look at the current year, 21 versus 22, it looks a little odd, but that's again because Angela is being paid through the financial services line in the expense section. If you recall, we did have town meeting transfer funds from salaries to expense back in the fall. And now we're shifting it back, with the assumption that a new permanent appointed treasurer will start in July. So overall, the budget's up about 7%, but I think it's mainly just the step increases and the modest increase to computer services that Angela mentioned. And you'll notice historically the computer service number was even higher, but some of those funds were to pay for the payroll service, and those are the funds we reallocated to the new human resources budget starting in FY21.
What makes up that $7,500 training assistance for new treasurer collector?
Yes, so that was my suggestion, Leah, and that's essentially to allow an overlap for Angela with the new person.
Okay.
Because, we're just not sure what we're getting yet. So we may or may not need those funds.
Yep.
But my thought was Angela has done so much to improve the operation. I just wanted to make sure there was a good handoff and that she'd be there, a little bit to support the new person if needed.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody got any questions on the treasurer collector budget?
No.
Thanks. Okay, legal services, pretty much the same, but as everybody knows, that can go up and down depending upon the situation. I mean, as right now, as an example, we have town council involved in the Lakeville Hospital permitting process, so there's additional expense there, but $60,000 is an average, as far as expenses are concerned, but that can vary. Any questions on the legal services?
Mr. Chair,
Sorry, go ahead.
you skipped animal control, by the way.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll go back to that. Thank you for reminding me of that.
I just had a question regarding the legal services. So for 2021, is that 60,000 in the ballpark? Will that be in the ballpark or?
No, it's probably going to be about $20,000 higher because of all the additional work, having to do with the Lakeville Hospital, some zoning issues, and having to do with the some of the marijuana host agreements.
So should we increase 2022? Are those things going to be settled before 2022 or?
Well, we won't have an exact number till after June 30th, Aaron. And, usually, what's done is that you have a basis and that basis can go up and down. If you look at what 2020, it actually was $57,000. So, you gotta, we don't think so at this point, but that's, it's up to the board if they want to increase it.
Okay, no, that's fine. I'm just saying if we're seeing it trending higher because of these outstanding issues.
I think we had a lot of activity in fiscal 21 with legal services, and I don't think we'll have as many going forward.
Okay, thank you.
Todd?
That's just my opinion, but.
Todd, do you have I don't have my budget right with me. Do you have a year-to-date on legal right now?
I do. The only trick with it is that the firm was a little behind in invoicing us, but
Yep.
I can tell you as of the end of February, we had expended 43,000 with 17 available.
Thank you.
So I think Rich is pretty close with his estimate that we may be short as much as 20,000 to get through the year.
Yeah. That probably doesn't include the most recent bill.
No.
Yep.
That's
Okay.
correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Go to 155 on page 4, information technology. You want to give an update on that, Brian?
Sure, I'd like to. Thank you. So first of all, I just want to say thank you very much to Lori and Todd for getting me all the information needed to get this done. I know I kept asking for more and more, and you helped me out immensely along with Green Rivers, helping dig into some information, and even Tim Graybar, as we reached out to him to find some information as well to put this together. So there's as Todd said earlier, about a 7% increase, but I think what we're going to find going forward is we're going to be much more stable year to year. I think we've smoothed out a lot of our costs. Now that a lot of the things that we rely on are kind of going towards a subscription service, we're going to see those kind of be similar year over year instead of where you'd see previously every 2 or 3 years a big spike in purchases and then not purchase for a couple of years. The items where there was the largest deltas really were the IT director salary. So as we know, we lost our IT director last year. So there was a portion of the year where he was salaried, being paid out. Then we transitioned to a managed service provider in the middle of the year. So we had some overlap there. And at the moment, we expect FY22 to more than likely continue to be a managed service provider. We'll have to go out to RFP again soon as the current contract does expire at the end of this fiscal year. So the number there, the 152 is an estimate right now based on what we have for services now, plus a little bit of headroom. So that could actually drop down depending on how that RFP comes in. On maintenance agreements, quick note on that. So we had some older hardware that came off and is no longer being used. But under maintenance agreements, really 84% of that number goes right to some of our bigger ticket items for Munis and the police station. So, there's really two things take up most of that. And then when we get down into software licensing, the increase there is About half of that goes right to OpenGov. So all of our online permitting tool, which has been getting heavily used lately, which is nice to see. And then the rest of that is some of the licensing towards the cloud services the town is now relying on. In addition to what we see here in the budget, you'll notice Todd also mentioned there's a capital item for 50,000 to help us start rotating some older equipment out that is coming end of life. And we may also be able to offset some costs this year with some funds the state put aside in the economic development bill. So thankfully, I was happy to see we only came out 7% up. But again, I'm hoping now year to year, we're going to see a smaller change as we go forward. So thank you again for everybody that did assist me in this.
Okay. The other area we're supposed to talk about is the animal control. But I supposed to be in the public safety area, but I don't
It's at
see
the
it.
very end of the public safety. It's the last department,
Thank you.
292.
I don't, oh, there it is. I'm sorry. I got it. So if you go to the public safety, it's Department 292. It's on page 5 of the public safety. So Leah, do you want to give us an update on that budget, please? You're on mute. You're on mute.
Hold on, I'm getting messages. Actually, Todd did the budget for me, so I think he's probably more familiar with it than I am.
Sure. So this budget's essentially level funded. You'll see it's up about 1.5%. What's still pending is the cost of living for the animal control officer, which will be supplemented in the next version of the budget. You see the expenses were essentially level funded. This program does rely, the shelter relies on a lot of donations as well, which are outside of the budget, and they're able to do a lot of things for the animals through the donation side of the house. So we do have a number, as you know, a number of area communities that participate in our shelter. So we do have some general fund revenue that comes in fees based on what animals may be boarded from various surrounding towns. But it's essentially a status quo program for next year.
Thank you, Todd. The only thing that I will add is that I believe as a board, we all made a mental note to check the amount that we were charging in the contracts for when the renewals go out next year, because I don't think that we've raised those fees, and I do think it's in our best interest to look at that. So if we have like a long-term calendar, I would definitely like to put that on there, because I think that I think we're really cheap. I think we should look at that, but.
Okay. Anybody got any other questions on the selectmen's budgets that we just talked about?
Nope.
Thank you. Okay. Then the next person on the agenda is the Cemetery Commission. And let's see, we gotta find their budget there.
So that will be the last page of the Public Works section of the budget book,
Thank you.
Department 491.
Okay. Do we have Ken on here?
Ken's on.
Hey, Ken, how you doing?
Good evening,
Ken.
everyone.
Do you have any other members, Ken?
I'm
Yes.
here, Joan Gladue Morton.
Okay, thanks, John. So, Ken, do you want to give, as you always do, which is great, a summary of the Cemetery Commission, what they're up to?
Okay, thank you. I'd like to call this meeting of the Cemetery Commission to order on March 9th at 7:05 PM. I am Ken Upham, the chairman of the Cemetery Commission, I'm sorry. And the roll call, Joan?
Here.
And Emery Laurel, who is a member of the commission, has stated he cannot be attending tonight. So bringing it back to the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, do you want to just give an overview or
Okay,
any questions or anything as far as your budget's concerned, Ken?
okay. In 2020, the accomplishments were as follows. We coordinated and attended 8 funerals. We sold 3 veterans' graves at Veteran Cemetery. We sold 4 graves at Precinct Cemetery. We sold 2 graves at Strawberry Cemetery. We prepared a new cremation area at Precinct Cemetery. We started repairing stone wall at McCully Cemetery. We completed an agreement with Cornerstone Community Church to discontinue town maintenance from Mullen Hill Cemetery. We repaired the fence at Strawberry Cemetery. We replaced the national flag at the Veteran Cemetery. We added 4 posts and rails for separation between Haskins and Oral family cemeteries. We encumbered from the 2020 present budget to finish the stone wall at McCully Cemetery, to buy 16 granite posts to complete the side section separating the Precinct Cemetery from Thompson Hill Cemetery. And we are encumbering installing 16 additional granite posts and rails, which we're trying to locate, because the issue is we have to have them in a time frame of the 17th or 18th century. And it's very, very difficult to try and find them. We believe we have located them. So we're in discussions right now on purchasing them. So our requested budget for 2021 is going to remain at $13,000.
Okay. Thank you, Ken, for the update. Anybody have any questions of the Cemetery Commission? Do a good job, Ken. We appreciate that.
Well,
I just have one question, just because it's the time of year where we get a lot of updates. We have sufficient plots for the time being?
We have 964.
Okay, great. Thank you. I like to know that for some odd
well,
reason.
If you look at it Mia, from the standpoint that if you're looking at the different cemeteries, the basic ones that are open are 3, and that's Precinct Cemetery, as you know.
Yeah.
So we have approximately 140. I'm going to use that as a round figure, probably a little more. And then if you take Strawberry Cemetery, which we just opened last year, as you know, we're looking at 500 plus. And if you take Clark Cemetery, we're looking at another 150, 160. So we have sufficiency, according to our past experiences, for 40 years.
Okay,
We won't
All
be
right.
around.
yeah. Okay, thank you. For some
You're
odd reason, I just need to know that number every year.
Understand.
Okay, anybody got any further questions for Ken? The Cemetery Commission.
I do like to thank Todd for his help with me a couple days ago. I appreciate it much.
Okay.
I just want to say thank you to you and Joan and, Emery too, for, I know you and Joan is great with doing her minutes. And, guys do a really great job.
Well, we appreciate it.
You're
Thank
there
you.
when, you're there when, sometime the worst time in some people's lives, and, it's nice to know that they can count on you too. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your kind words.
Well, thank you.
Okay, the next on the agenda was the Board of Assessors, and I don't see John yet. So maybe,
Rich, sorry, do we need to go, do we need to stick to the schedule, or is it okay to go ahead?
no, we can go ahead, yeah.
Okay, all right,
So I
thanks.
was gonna suggest that we do Human Resources while we're waiting for John. So Human Resources is,
General government, the bottom of page 3.
Okay. So Calinda Dumfrey, who is our HR director, did you want to talk a little bit and give an overview of your budget, Calinda, please?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. So this is just the second year that HR has had its own budget. So last year I really wasn't entirely sure on how to budget for certain things. But there hasn't really been many fluctuations on the expense side. The only exception really is payroll services, because we've been using the same provider for like years and years, and we have been researching replacing this payroll system. I know Brian Day is going to be really excited about this paperless system. So you'll just see that I'm requesting a little bit more money in that line item. Salaries are staying the same for the most part. There's just a part-time floater who's worked a little bit less over the past year, so that was adjusted downward a little bit. And then I didn't have a line item for advertising for positions like on Indeed and MMA. So you'll notice that. Also, the HR budget oversees the administration of the town's benefits. Todd spoke a little bit about the pension assessment that went up a little over 12%. And then unemployment was something that was really very volatile over the past year with the pandemic. We don't usually see much activity with that, but we did. It seems to have calmed down over the past couple of months though. And then on the health insurance benefits, we haven't gotten the rates yet, but we don't expect much of a change with those. There's always some fluctuation every year. When new employees are hired and they need health insurance, they now share the cost at 50%. So, and then if someone gets married or some kind of qualifying event, there's always changes that go through. We've accounted for some retirements this coming year. So we think there'll be enough, certainly enough money in that line item. So that's pretty straightforward. I don't know if anyone has any questions.
Yeah, I have a question. Who did you choose for your new payroll provider?
We haven't made the choice yet, but we're leaning towards Harper's, which I've heard good things about, and talked to a couple of other towns who use them. So we're still kind of in the process of researching it.
Do they specialize in municipal payrolls, or
They do a lot of municipal payrolls, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Lorinda, you're right. I'd be very happy to see all that paper go away. So save on paying days from fewer paper cuts. Quick question for Todd. Do we need to update Clorinda's title from coordinator to director on her line?
Yes, thank you.
All
It will be in the next version. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Can I just ask, not really ask, I sort of just want to make a comment that as we're going through the budget, I'm already seeing some of the vacation buyback lines. I just want to remind or let anyone know that we had done a one-time sort of buyback on some of the vacation because of COVID, whatever. So that's not, we do have some buyback, but it's typically not as much as what may show up. Correct, Lorinda?
Yep, and I've been reminding people to use that time.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Calinda? Okay, I don't know where John Oliveri is. I was just trying to text him. So we'll wait 1 minute, see if he shows up at 7:15 at his time. Oh, there he is. Look at that. There you are, John.
Can you hear me?
Yep, right on time, John. Perfect.
Well, I don't want to waste anyone's time, including my own. And I'm gonna try to set a record here. I can't imagine our portion of this is gonna go very long, so unless you guys have questions.
Okay, so we'll go into the Board of Assessors, which is Department 141. It's in the General Government, page 2.
You ready for me?
We're ready.
Okay, obviously everyone has a copy of our budget. For the most part, the only increases are coming in the salary lines. Everything else has relatively stayed the same, although you see some larger variances from a percentage standpoint in regards to professional services, training and education. Those are small dollar amounts, so that's the only reason they appear bigger than they actually are. They're literally hundreds of dollars that are being taken off. So at the end of the day, we're looking for 1.58% increase, which basically the lion's share of that is in salaries, which are contract.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for John?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I think you said this tonight was when we would discuss what to do about, I think it's line item computer and GIS services, whether that should remain where it is, or if we should look at how to integrate with other departments. I believe the two of you had a discussion a couple of weeks ago on that.
Are you posing that to me, the two of?
My understanding was the two chairs were going to have a meeting after a selectmen's meeting, and that we would discuss the results here.
One of the issues, John, as you know, is the integration, especially with the building department. And I know this has been discussed in the past to make sure that everything is in sync. And I think Brian's question is, what do we need to do that, since we just signed a new contract, with this company, and specifically talking about, GIS mapping and so forth and so on, and working also with the, I think the other one was the highway department, identifying, catch basins and things like that. So I guess what Brian wants to know is, are we going to put together a plan to address those?
Yeah, our department is more than happy to do that. It's a really good question, Brian. We've talked about this on and off for years, because obviously so many departments within the town do use the GIS system, and I'm not going to lie and say we've had an in-depth discussion about how to budget that going forward. I mean, it's at this point our budget is relatively flat for argument's sake, but we're more than willing to put together a group to kind of figure out the best way to budget going into the future in regards to that.
I think that would be very much appreciated by the other departments. I think, some of this stems from my disappointment that it looks like last year there was an agreement between CAI and DPW at least to get some updates in place, some new layers in place. And we went in a full calendar year with no response. And whether the response should have accurately been, hey, that wasn't part of our contract, we're not going to do it. That would have been fine if they just responded and said so. Completely would have understood. But, it just worries me. Do these other departments have access to resources they need to get towards some of these goals, like DPW and their clean streets? So how are they going to map out their catch basins and such if we can't get a response from the company, or they say they're going to do something and then we go 12 months and find out they didn't? So I would just like to understand how we're going to integrate these with other folks that rely on it.
Well, I will make you a promise now in a public forum that what I will do is I will coordinate with the other departments. I think part of it tends to be sometimes one department's talking to an individual and another department doesn't know what's going on. So I think what we need to do is facilitate a process where everything goes through, one gateway, so to speak, so that everyone can be kept in the loop. And I think that's probably to some degree what you're talking about as far as the DPW. I know we weren't aware of some of what was going on at that point. So I will be more than happy to make sure we coordinate that going forward.
Yeah, no, that would be great. That's a good start for sure. And then maybe coming back and making sure that the underlying services that they're using are able to integrate with other things the town has as well. But
Absolutely.
discussion for another day. Thank you, sir.
You're more than welcome.
Okay, anybody else got any questions for John from the Board of Assessors?
Yeah, I do. It's a minor question, actually. Is there any reason why the first 4 line items under expenses are blank for the last 4 years? Are those not valid anymore, or the electricity?
It's a very simple answer. When we were in I'll call it the house, which was our office on Main Street behind Something's Brewing, we obviously had separate utility costs that we do no longer have where we're in the town hall with everyone else. So yeah, that's probably just something, and I'm looking at you, Todd, and I'm seeing you nod. We could probably just take that off our budget going forward.
Yeah, and I think John, why it's still there is last year, we're showing actual expense from 2018, but my apologies, I should have hidden these, but John's exactly right. This was when they were at the other site, the cost of the facility there.
Okay, makes sense. Thanks.
Yep.
Okay, well, I guess we're all set, John. Thank you. Appreciate you coming.
You're welcome. I'm not sure if I broke the record, but I think that was pretty quick.
It's pretty close. At least to
Thanks.
put us back on schedule anyways.
Rich, like I always say, whatever I can do to help. Thanks. Take care. Have a
Thank
good
you,
night,
John.
everyone.
Good night. Okay, Lillian, Town Clerk Lillian Drain, are you there?
I sure am.
There you
Good
go.
evening.
Good earning. We're actually going to start a little bit early if you have no objection.
No, I'm ready.
Okay.
All right.
So we know we have a number of areas for the town clerk besides our regular office. We have elections and some other areas. So I guess
Sure.
we should do is start with Department 161, which is the town clerk's office.
Okay, so my town clerk salaries, that went up 2.23% due to increases on wages, which is a step increase to the assistant town clerk. My town clerk expenses, my budget went up to 4.43% due to increases on dog tags, forms, and I will be binding 3 years worth of death, marriages, and vital births on vital records. Also, the maintenance of databases that I have. So I went up $505 on that. On my elections expense, I only went up 90%, I should say. Due to the increase on my election workers, I am hoping to bring them up to their hourly pay increase from $11 to $12 an hour. They deserve a little bit more, but I'm hoping for that for now. My registration budget, it was increased to 2.76% due to the outsourcing of my town census. There's an increase on the printing of them. So keep in mind that I have to send out a second mailing after the first mailing. So that went up slightly this year. So that's what I need to increase for next year. That's an extra $500. So that is just my budget for now.
Well, you might want to explain to them the difficulties that you had with the presidential election and the state election.
Oh, you want to hear
all
that?
the costs and all the costs associated with that, which the town didn't have to
Oh, my
pay
God.
for.
Well, I was going to
It
save
was a
that for
major
next. I was going to save that for the following year because vote by mail is here to stay. So that was really tough. Not only did I had to hire extra help to help me on the daily data entry of the vote by mail for the September primary in the presidential election, which was hard to keep up with. Everybody wanted to vote by mail. That was nice. We had early voting, which was 14 days for the presidential election and 7 days for the state primary. All those have to be entered manually because people are now looking at the state online portal and make sure that that ballot has been accepted. So that was a lot of work that I think in next year's budget, meaning FY23, I am going to be looking to hire a part-time person to help me administer the governor's election, meaning the state election, and then to get me ready for the presidential election in 2024. So I think Lakeville is changing. We have a lot of residents that have moved in. We have over 8,500 registered voters, a little bit over 12,000 residents in town. So of course my increase on census is increasing. And it feels like we have more dogs than residents in town. So licensing those dogs have been very difficult, trying to keep making sure that they come in, the rabies are up to date, and these dogs are licensed. So it's Lakeville is changing like everything else. So my small little office of myself and my assistant, eventually we're gonna need help. So that's where I stand.
Okay, anybody got any questions for the town clerk?
Not really questions, but the town clerk's office has been in overdrive for a little while now. So Lillian and Jesse have been doing just, a really good job keeping up with, there's been public records request most recently on the, on the hospital project, and people don't realize that, they have to research this stuff, print it off. It all costs money to the town. So, there's a lot, anytime anyone does it, and I'm not saying people shouldn't do public records requests. That's our right to do that. But there's a lot of work that goes into it. And I just, I just really want to thank them most recently for that, but also for the elections and the early voting. I was really happy that we were able to secure a permanent early voting location so that, Lil's a planner. It's obvious by the report that she just gave us. It's nice, it's nice for the town clerk to know, and the residents to know where early voting is going to be. And I think the clerk's office handled the pressure this year very well with the presidential election. So really, job well done.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
The undertaking on that was incredible. Not only was there last minute changes from the Secretary of State that we had to follow and keep up with the demand with just 2 people in the office was huge on top of our other duties. But we made it work. So we came through.
Like Leah said, I really do thank you. That went off without a hitch, and watching your department kind of, behind the scenes, it was the calm duck with the crazy feet under the water, getting it all
It sure
done.
was.
It all went
Yeah.
good. And, my last few months getting to interact with your department more gives me much more appreciation of all the other stuff you guys do that nobody really realizes. So
No, thank you. Thank you. I have an excellent assistant. My poll workers are excellent. I could not do my job without them. And Teddy and everybody else that has been so supportive. It's huge. It takes a village. So thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Lillian? Okay, all set. Thank you, Lillian.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay, we have a little bit of a lull here, it looks like, to wait for another person, another department to show up. So, George, what I would suggest that you do, and I know it's on your agenda, is to appoint a new chairman of the Finance Committee.
Yep. So thanks. And guys, this is, it's been absolutely fantastic, but this is my last year. So we had discussed this in our last meeting, but it wasn't on the agenda, so we couldn't vote on it. But in light of me ending my time on the Finance Committee, it is time to select, to appoint or vote on somebody new. So I know Darren had expressed an interest in it. I think he would be absolutely fantastic for it, given his experience and time on the finance committee. And I'd like to make a motion to appoint Darren as the chairman for the finance committee.
Larry Costan, second.
Great. So time for discussion, or not. Well, I think I speak for everybody, and there's a huge vote of confidence in having Darren there. He's got really great experience, and I think it is time for somebody new to take the reins. And I'm a firm believer in term limits, so I think that leaving it in good hands makes me feel better about moving on as well. So let's go to a vote. So George Vlahopoulos, aye. Larry?
Larry Costan, aye.
Adam Lynch, aye.
Darren Beals, aye.
Great. Well, there you go. And I pass the reins over to Darren now.
Congratulations.
So Darren,
What's
we
the
need,
salary again? How much
Darren, we need to,
paid? I'm just sorry, just making a joke.
What did you say, Darren? Go ahead.
Sorry, what am I getting paid again for this?
Oh, 0.
All right.
0.
Darren, you
Yeah.
need to appoint a member of the finance committee to the capital expenditure committee, please.
Okay. Well, I'll ask Larry and Adam if either one of them are interested.
I'll do it unless Larry wants to, but I'm interested.
Okay. I'll make a motion that we appoint Adam Lynch to the capital committee.
Second?
Vote. Larry?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Darren Beals, aye. Adam?
Adam Lynch, aye.
Great.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're still waiting, but I see that we have Kelly here, Kelly Howley, our COA director.
Mr. Chair?
So we'll
Mr.
do
Chair?
the CO.
The finance committee does have one other thing they need to
Oh.
do. They need to vote on 2 sets of minutes.
Oh, okay, go ahead, Darren.
Okay. I'd like, first of all, did everyone receive the minutes from Tracy?
Yes.
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 Okay. I'd like to make a motion that the January 25th Finance Committee meeting minutes are approved.
Second?
Okay, we'll vote. Larry?
Aye.
Adam?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Darren, aye.
And Darren, you also have November 16th on your agenda as well to vote on.
Okay, sorry, I'm not sure I got those, but did the other members?
Hold on.
Maybe I may have just missed them. Are the other guys ready to vote on those?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, I'll make a motion to approve the Finance Committee November, what was the date again? I'm sorry.
November 16th, 2020.
November 16th, 2020 meeting minutes. Got a second?
Second?
Okay, we'll vote. Larry?
Aye.
Adam?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Darren Beals, aye. All set, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I just want to thank George for all his years of service. I'm going to miss you, George, not for any reason other than I'm not quite sure what's more difficult to say, your last name or my first name. So we always jest about things like that. So please make sure that we see you at town meeting. And when you're ready, come on back.
You got it. Without a doubt. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure and an honor.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, George.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, so we're gonna go to COA Director Kelly Howley, and that is in your Health and Human Services section, which is the orange page. And her department number is 541. So Kelly, you want to talk a little bit about your budget and some of the programs and some of the things that you've been doing over the last year, which have been very difficult. And hopefully we'll do some things going forward.
Sure, sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and the Board of Selectmen. You know, as everyone else, the COA has been met with many challenges this year. But the silver lining is that our team has been able to create new and innovative ways to serve the seniors. And we, you know, even though not being open to the public, we were able to do a lot of things that we never imagined we'd be able to do remotely, which was comforting to us and to the seniors. Our Meals on Wheels, we saw a huge increase when people started staying home. And a lot of our volunteers that delivered Meals on Wheels were not comfortable with delivering anymore. So we were doing it with our van. We still are to some degree, but we've had some volunteers come back and a lot of new interest. So we've been getting those folks quarried and getting them trained. So that will be really helpful to get the van back to its regular schedule as things, you know, hopefully come back to a little bit more normalcy. We've also had many drive-up events. I know some of you guys have come over for those, and those are really fun. The seniors have appreciated them. They just, you know, they're just happy to get out of the house and be safe. So that they've been very responsive to that. We were excited. You know, and we're just hoping that when we open up and more and more people can get vaccinated, that we can just continue to do the things that we used to do and provide that sense of community for them that, you know, we all really miss. It's pretty strange having the center being empty. But
we're just wondering if anyone from historical is going to be coming.
Sorry. Go ahead, Kelly.
Okay.
Sorry.
And so onto my budget, and, you know, if you guys have any questions on any of, you know, what I just spoke about or the budget part, please feel free. My building budget is the same as last year. You know, we kept everything the same. We were very fortunate to have a lot of donations this year, which helped out with food and some of the different creative things that we did for the seniors. The only increase that I'm proposing is I want to promote my clerk, Lori Fahey, to administrative assistant. She's been doing a great job. She's been with us for over 4 years. She's wonderful with the seniors. She's enthusiastic and compassionate. And I think she's really ready for this move. And it would be, you know, a really good thing for the senior center. So that is a 4.6% increase in the salary budget for my department. And that's the only increase that we're really looking for this year.
Okay. Anybody got any questions for Kelly?
No specific question, sir, but I would just like to say I was really impressed at how the COA staff has adapted over the last year and just figured out ways to keep doing things for folks and keep getting those services out there. So thank you for keeping everybody's spirits up and, you know, getting the job done.
Thank you. Like Lil said, it takes a village. My team is amazing, and, you know, everybody's come up with different ideas, and actually a lot of the different senior centers in the area that we meet with and talk with on a regular basis, you know, we share ideas, and it's just been really nice to have that support locally and, you know, and broader. And then my team is just amazing. So thank you.
Okay. Any questions for Kelly?
Oh, I just wanted to reiterate the same that Brian said, but my dog's barking. So I'm just going to say, Kelly, great job. I really wish I could get over there more for some of the drive-through. Seniors are like so happy when they come through. So it's you guys are girls are doing great work there. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you're free on St. Patrick's Day, we're doing a big drive-through event on Wednesday, St. Patrick's Day. So that should be fun. But
you know what? St. Patrick's Day, the St. Patrick's Day luncheon was the last in-person event I did last year before COVID. So I just may join you for that.
Yeah, it's the last time that we saw all our seniors together too. So that's why I wanted to try and make sure we didn't, you know, miss that this year and get them out there. And
yeah,
so,
thank
you're
you.
always welcome.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, we're still waiting for the next group to show up. Todd, you know what? One of the things you should talk about is the COVID-19 expenses and reimbursements.
Sure.
You know, just to give an overview of that, because I think we forgot that, you know, what are we now at? Almost 1.3 million, no, $1.2 million if everything gets submitted. So there's a lot of work and a lot of reimbursement associated with that.
Sure. Yeah, so just briefly, and this is an update since we were all together the last time. So to date, the town has submitted requests to the Plymouth County CARES program. They're administering the federal program for the county. Reimbursement detail in excess of $855,000. About $548,000 of that relates to education to support Old Colony, Volk and Freetown Lakeville regional schools. We do anticipate another just over $500,000 of requests to support Freetown Lakeville regional schools. We're working slowly through their expenses. There is a portion of that we're waiting to make sure Freetown is able to contribute their proportionate share. As I said earlier during the budget discussion, these funds are also paying for 2 temporary firefighter positions for the fire department since last March. And we plan to continue to fund it this way through the calendar year. And we've to date been, of that 855 submitted, we've received 415,000 to date from the county. Just over 310,000 of that was for regional schools. And we've got, 6 applications out for their review right now. And we, as like I say, we plan on whatever other expenses the town may need in addition to the 2 temporary firefighters, some technology needs, and possibly a little more for Old Colony Volk, but I'm not sure where that stands.
Okay, and that includes all the PPE supplies, for the fire department, for the town hall, the employees, the police department, and so forth. So all of those expenses associated with that has not cost the town any money, at this point. So, and we're anticipating tomorrow that I guess it's back at the House, that the stimulus package will get approved, tomorrow, and we'll see what happens. We have no idea the specific amounts. We have no idea about the reimbursements at this point, but hopefully that'll be positive as well. We're definitely going to get something. It depends upon the magnitude of it.
And there's been some just as a follow-up to that, there's been some indication, but Rich is right, we don't know definitively, but there's been some indication that this next round may include some revenue relief, which would be really critical for us, at least with our park program.
Okay, anybody, any questions of Todd about that? Okay, did Tracy, by any chance, did you hear from the Historical Commission?
I spoke to Nancy LaFave, and she is going to gather the troops together and come on as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you. That's good.
And I did hear from them today as well, Rich. And so on your agenda for tonight, we have 3 items under historical, and they pointed out to me that the historic library is not under the jurisdiction of the Historic Commission. So we sort of had that grouped, but I reminded them that we knew that was under the Board of Selectmen. So they may raise that. That was a concern earlier today.
So while we're waiting for them, we were going to talk about some of the capital items. So if you go to the purple.
Chair, can I, before we move on, just because it pertains to what Todd just said, the historic house is under their budget though, correct, Todd?
Correct.
Okay. Only because I know we're using it for elections now. And I mean, the utility costs really aren't that high at all, but I just want to be sure we're, again, classifying everything correctly.
Mr. Chair, we have Jerry Taylor and Nancy LaFave on the line in the room for historical.
Okay, they're all set?
And there is a phone, but I'm not sure if that's Brian Reynolds or not.
Could be
No, it's Joan
Yes.
Morton.
Joan Morton.
That's Joe Morton. Okay, so they do have a quorum present.
But we are not posted. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Well, this is only informational anyway. It's no
Okay.
big deal.
I didn't get it in on time.
Okay. All right, so, we're gonna do the Historic Commission first, and that is,
The Culture and Recreation tab, Department 691 at the bottom of the page.
okay. All right, okay, Nancy, did you want to talk about anything to do with the expenses? Some of the things that we're working on to get completed, or?
Well, the Historical Commission budget
Mhm.
itself is only $500, right?
Right.
Is that what, and then we oversee the Historic Townhouse budget, but we don't oversee the Historic Library.
No, we know that. That was a mistake on Todd's
Everybody
part.
understands that. We've been consulted about that, but not overseen. Okay.
So you want to give an update on the old town hall and some of the things that have already been funded
Right.
and that need to be completed? I know that you're working with Teddy and Nate to get some of those things done.
Right. So one of the things that we wanted to do is add some electrical outlets. And so I think that's been maybe ongoing. I haven't been into the building recently in the last week or so, but I've seen trucks there. So I assume something's going on. One of the things that we haven't seen done and the town did appropriate at a special town meeting was the money to replace the roof. And we hope that gets done this year. That money is already set aside. And also to cap the chimney with a vent system so that will, and weatherproof it, that those two things still are outstanding. But other things that have happened have been over the last couple of years. We've done things like the ramp, and then the exterior was painted, and the shutters were repaired and painted, replaced and repainted. So a lot of work has been done on that building and also on the steamroller building on the back of it's on the back of the property. And that had a new roof and it had repairs to the walls. At some point in time, the cross braces on the roof were cut to allow for some kind of large equipment, and that was repaired, and the doors were repaired and rehung. And so all of that's been taken care of, and we really appreciate it because it preserves an aspect of the history of Lakeville. So interior, we have some door work that needs to be done, and the carpenter is going to be doing that, I believe. And then we have a upstairs second floor window, which is in very poor condition, which was going to be replaced. And the other second one was going to be looked at, and then a determination made whether or not it could be repaired or it needed to be replaced. So many things have happened inside the building, and we also added the HVAC on-demand systems, which worked well for the November primary issues with the change in temperature and everything, so that people could use the building all seasons, basically. And so that's already been installed, and we're very happy with that too.
Good.
Did I miss anything? There's been a lot of going
I
on.
want to talk about the historical library in a second. But,
We also had some issues with one of the doors, and we thank the superintendent of highways, roads, public works. I can't remember the titles now, but he actually came to our aid because that right front door had a problem with the hinges and wasn't closing and came open and all this sort of stuff. So that was something that needs to be just looked at and determined whether or not it needs to be rehung or repaired or something. And we need new locks and keys system for both doors and for the second floor office that we share with the sealer of weights and measures, because it's they're very old locks and they're not operating correctly, and we don't want to have somebody's key break off inside them. So those are some ongoing things.
Okay,
And then
great.
just general maintenance.
So one of the other things that I was approved, I believe it was a year ago. It had to do with a historical study, I believe.
Oh, that was the grant we got?
Yeah,
Oh,
a
was it-
$30,000, I believe. I think there was two pieces to it. The one that needs to be funded this year is the archaeological survey and preservation plan. Right?
Yeah.
I think so, yes.
That's on the capital plan for this year because we didn't fund it last year.
Right.
Okay.
But there was something else that was supposed to be done that hasn't started because of COVID-19.
We have to make our survey comprehensive. And what that means is that we have to we are required by Mass Historical Commission to make sure that we have enough houses or structures covered or sites covered in the town of Lakeville. And they felt that our survey was not comprehensive. And so the last time we worked with a gentleman named Mr. Krim, and he actually is a professional researcher, and he actually went in and did a certain area of Lakeville for us. So we're trying to get information back from them. We got his name from Mass Historical Commission, and to see if there's other people that we can get to do that sort of thing, because we have some pending things that we'd like to do, like National Historic designations, and Mass Historical won't sign off on any of those unless our inventory is comprehensive. So this is and COVID-19 has not helped us with contacting anybody. So we're hoping to get this done, yes.
All right, I just want to make sure everybody's aware of what you're trying to accomplish there. Okay, the only other thing, I know that, you're not responsible for the old historical library, but I know that you guys are really involved, in making sure that that facility is maintained and the integrity of the building is maintained, going forward. The Board of Selectmen, I don't know, about a month ago, decided that we weren't going to rent out the facility anymore. And so the plan was to do some renovations, to that building and move the inspectional services and the Board of Health over to that building to give us space for the fire department, which is badly needed. So I know that Nancy's been over there many times looking at it, and we want to make sure that you understand that we're not taking anything down. We're not removing any shelving. We're trying to maintain exactly the way it is. But the plan really right now is, and actually this week, everything has been removed that belonged to something brewing, all the counters and all those sinks and on that, and it's all been cleaned out. And so we're in the process of painting that. And I know that Nancy picked out the color. And so the ceiling is being done right now as we speak, and the walls are going to be painted. And the plan is to completely refinish those floors in there, bring them back to where they natural floors. And then we're going to be putting in a handicap bathroom, which is badly needed, as you know. And also we're going to put in a handicap ramp, which is yet to be determined, which will be reviewed by the Historical Commission, as well, to make sure that you're in agreement with that. And also, as you know, the front stairs is falling apart. So those will be repaired as well. And then some of the windows on the short term and the long term over time, replace the windows. So I know that everybody's excited about this, getting this, refurbishing that building the way it should be, because it hasn't been maintained for years. And we feel good about that. So anybody want to say anything?
One of our important aspects of some of the repair work that's being done to the exterior is the fact that we would like to see it placed on the National Historic Register. We have so much information about the architect and everyone involved with that building. And so going forward, we want just to make sure that the exterior retains the same historical aspects that will allow us to do that. So, and that's also tied into the fact that we have to get our survey comprehensive. So those are two things that are going forward.
Yeah, the plan would be, to keep it exactly the way it is, Nancy, except for the handicap accessibility.
Right. And we understand, and the Historical Commission likes the fact that historic buildings are used, and sometimes the interior has to be modified, but some of the original elements like the ingle nook and the colors of the bookcases and things like that are retained. And the color that I picked for the ceiling or for the walls was just, it's an off-white that is less yellow. I think it was what we ended up with. And it's a historic color too. So it will open up the space a little bit from the gold that was currently there, as a coffee house. So that was just, we're really pleased with the sensitivity that's going into the remaking, and we're happy, the Historical Commission is really happy that the building will be used for town government and will be preserved as a result of that.
And we're also putting in all new air conditioning units. So you can see, how the air conditioning units were hanging down from the ceiling there, ugly looking things. Those have
And
all
noisy,
been removed.
noisy.
Those have all been removed, and we're putting other mini systems in there. So, okay, so while we're talking about that, and actually we're going to talk about it further tomorrow night with the building inspector, as well. But just so you know, we're estimating the renovation costs, which would include the handicap accessibility and the handicap ramp and so forth, and some other stuff, estimated at roughly $100,000. So I think everybody agrees this is money well spent.
Yes.
Anybody got any questions?
Brian Reynolds. I don't have any question about the library because I think it's a very good idea, but there is artwork at Lakeville Hospital. They are like ceramic on an outside wall, and we would like to get them removed and on display somewhere in the town. And so there may be an expense to the removal of the artwork.
The contractor has already agreed to remove that, Brian. That was discussed at one of the Lakeville Hospital's public hearing meeting. And so they will work with the town to take that down. And the first thing we got to do is figure out where it is, because if you're going to be removing it, that's, and help me out here, that is in cement, it's got to be done very carefully. Otherwise, it's all going to crack and break up. So here they are aware of it. And if the project goes forward, they're willing to work with the town to accomplish that.
Okay, good.
This is Jerry Taylor from the Historical Commission. A few years ago, probably over 10 years ago now, I had asked Laurie Hunter if she would like the nursery rhyme characters. And we had walked around the building, and the back of the gymnasium is just a plain brick wall. And we thought that might be a good place. Nothing ever happened, but, that's an option. I don't know how the school committee feels about having it there, but that's an idea.
Jerry's referring to Assawamsett School.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, for anybody who doesn't know.
I think what has to be done first, Jerry, is to determine what's there. And because, as you probably know, the buildings have deteriorated so badly, and a lot of them have caved in, at this point. So it all have to be looked at to determine whether it's practical or not.
Right.
We have one piece that was given to the Historical Commission, which is at the library, and it's the Mayflower. And it's a half moon piece, and it was taken off by our highway department at that time when it was national development. And they said it is a very difficult thing to do, and it's probably a miracle that the piece that we have is in good condition and everything. But it's because it weighs a lot. It's very heavy, so you have to have a crew working to do this. And I think most of the people that did it are now retired from the highway department. But
perhaps one idea.
Yeah, the piece that Brian, that Brian is talking about is, it's on the outside of the building, correct,
Right.
Mr. Reynolds?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
There's about 6 or 7 pieces of the ceramic artwork, but they're on the outside.
yeah, and I'm not sure if any of you are following social media, but lots of folks would like to see those saved too.
I've seen those requests as well. Maybe one idea, if we, given how difficult it could be to remove from that exterior wall, would be to, it's a lot easier these days to do laser scans or do an impression of it, so that if during the dismantling, if they do crack or fall apart, at least you've got a reference if you want to try to recreate it, if anything.
Right, and I mean,
Yes,
knowing
that's a good idea.
Yeah, knowing the condition of the building, of course, would have to make sure that it's, safe and whatever, but the first I heard of it was seeing it on social media, and I didn't even know it was out there. So I think it would be great if we could preserve that. And actually, I do think there was some other talk on social media questioning whether our historic folks have been through there. Of course, at this point, I wouldn't really want anyone going through there, but I just don't know if anyone had ever been through there before.
We did an out.
Well,
we
I've
did
been
an
through it.
Yeah, the commission
Go
did
ahead.
an exterior walk of the site way back when National Development had taken it over a long time ago.
Yep. Okay, thanks.
Okay, when national development was active, as somebody said, the highway department removed one of the figures on the wall, and they used air hammers with chisels, and it was quite a job, but it can be done. But you need some, heavy equipment and tools. You just can't lift them off the wall, and if the contractor is willing to do it, it'd be really great.
It depends upon the situation, Brian. It all has to be looked at, because right now there's DEP has mandated that nobody is allowed to go outside the buildings, including the police and fire department, without a hazmat suit. So it's a little more complicated than that, but they said they'd be willing to look at it. That's all I can say right now.
Okay.
Okay, anybody else got any questions for historical, or any questions on the old library at this point? Okay, well, we appreciate you coming. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night.
Yep, bye.
Okay, let's see who we got here, if we got anybody yet.
I leave.
Okay, we don't have anybody from the planning board yet, so is there any other questions, or I guess we'll mention, well, there's actually a couple, I'm sorry, we do mention one thing. First thing, we do have $50,000 in the budget for technology. Brian, did you want to touch on that?
The capital item?
Yeah.
So there is a number of pieces of hardware around town that are approaching their end of life, where it doesn't mean that the hardware will fail the day after end of life, but that becomes the point where if you were to call into a vendor, they can no longer provide you any technical support, or the devices may no longer receive security updates, software updates, etc. So there's a recommendation in the IT strategic plan document I found a few years ago, created a few years ago, that had outlined some of these things that Green Rivers had also started to identify, and that is where that figure came from. So it might not get us all the way there, but should at least get the ball rolling to help us start to get rid of some of those older items.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
So the other thing that's in here on the capital is a feasibility study for the town hall and fire station. Now, the board looked at the 2006 or 7 feasibility study, and at that time it was proposing to build a public safety building, one building for police and fire, and then to renovate the town office building as well. A lot of things have changed, in the last 14 years, significantly have changed. That the police station, the new police station, the Board of Selectmen at the time decided just to go ahead with building a new police station. And as you know, it's the police station standalone, building. It's not a public safety building. So then we're talking about short-term solutions, and long-term solutions. And the short-term solution is to provide additional space that's needed for the town offices, which is badly needed, and also having to do with the fire station. And the fire station has got a lot of problems and a lot of issues that need to be addressed. And we're going to try to do first, as we talked about, is to try to do some renovations in the fire station to make it workable, to make it a workable environment that the fire department can be used. And so that's one plan, and we're going to talk about that plan tomorrow night. But anyway, so what we decided to do was to redo the feasibility study, because now there's multiple options, as far as what we can do with the town office building and the fire station. We can do everything from having a standalone fire station to having the fire station be at the town hall, to build a new town office building and leave the existing building for all the fire station and renovate that. So what we're trying to do is get a handle on that. If you're going to build a fire station, a standalone fire station today, you're talking at least $10-12 million minimum. Whereas if you're going to build a town hall, you may be able to do that for $4 million. So we want to look at those costs associated with those options and determine what the best option is, because we do have some good office space, in the existing town hall that could be utilized by the fire department, but we certainly have some problems with the fire engine bays and so forth and so on. So that's the plan, is to do that, is to update that plan over the next year. Anybody want to say anything? Brian, you want to say anything about that, or?
No, just saying I'm completely on board with, the town going back and looking at its options. I think for anybody who, well, last year was a little tough with COVID, but for any residents or fans that went into the open house that the fire department had, I believe the year before, they had a drive-through one this past year. But if you get a chance to really go in and look up close and see the working conditions and how they try to operate with what they have, I think it's very clear that the town has to figure something out, at least like you said, to make it operational, at least to a start. So I do look forward to seeing those options. Some of the early sketches are, at least for our short-term plan, are nice to see the detail going into them. And I really do hope we can come up with something that is workable for Chief O'Brien and all of his staff.
Quick question. So the $100,000 in this year's budget, that will get the fire station, the current fire station, in working condition, or is that just a Band-Aid? And
The plan is for that is that we would take the Board of Health area, okay, the whole office there. I don't know if you're familiar with that, Darren. And the goal would be that would become what they call the day room, where they, do their things in there, wait for calls and so forth and so on. Then there'd be bunk rooms that would be built for the firefighters to sleep in. Because currently we only have one bunk room, and so those bunk rooms, there'd be 3 of them that would be moved down into that area. Because, in today's environment, and we're getting, I forget how many we have. We got at least 4 or 5 female, call firefighters and so forth, and we have to accommodate them. Currently, right now, depending upon who's who, somebody would sleep in the bunk room and then the other person.
Sorry about that.
Big cat.
Somebody had to be first. It's all right.
Someone would sleep in the day room. So there's that piece. Okay. The other piece is that one of the pieces is that the bathroom that they have in there is in pretty bad shape. So that would be completely renovated. It includes the shower area and includes bathrooms and, doing the bathroom the way it should be. and then adjusting some of the other areas, the work areas, where they, get their gear together, and then the storage areas where they store all their gear and so forth and so on. And then up in the offices, I don't know if you know where the fire chief is today, but that whole area needs to be renovated. Carpet needs to be torn out and painted, and ceiling needs to be replaced. And they're proposing putting in a tile floor in that environment, which is currently used as a training room, but not effectively. And then there's a kitchen up there, and the kitchen would be completely renovated, which would not only be for the fire department, would be for the town employees. The town employees have been asking for this for years, to take that area and clean it all up. So that's the gist of it. And, $100,000 doesn't go too far, but we think we can get that all done.
Yeah, so everything you mentioned just now would be covered by the $100,000, more or less.
That's correct, Darren.
Right,
Okay.
but Darren, to your point, it's a little better than a Band-Aid, but ultimately, in my opinion, we're going to need a new fire station. We've said this a few times that the fire apparatus, the fire engines that are sold now, the door openings to our fire department barely fit some of the equipment that's out there. So, there's not much we can do about remaking the actual openings that the fire engines drive in and out of. So, and I would just like to add that by the time it works itself out, whatever that is, that timing, and like, Lillian Drain, the town clerk said, the town is growing. We're still going to need more office space at town hall. So, we're growing. That's the basic point here is the town is growing, the population's getting, we have to house things that we never did, like technology before. And,
And there's other tricky areas, like when we stop and look at, okay, let's make the bays bigger and extend the building by 10 feet to do that. Well, now that you've added square footage, my understanding is now you got to go through the building and trigger adding sprinklers to the whole place. And then if you're adding sprinklers, you have to start talking about, well, do we need asbestos abatement during all that? So that, what sounds like an easy fix suddenly turns into this cascading problem of additions and construction.
No, I understand all that. These are big ticket items, right? So I think just getting this out there to everyone as soon as possible and sharing this is important, because as you said, we just paid for the fire. We're in the middle of paying for the police department. The roads, the new road 79, there's just a lot of big items coming up. So, and I agree that it's needed, but it's just something to let people know about sooner rather than later. So.
I agree with you. And I think communication is key here because, doesn't everyone want more than one ambulance? Anyone that follows, and I think our, Chief O'Brien does a really good job of giving folks an example of, again, with more people, there's more accidents, there's more medical incidents, there's more fires, there's more, everything. So we have to be able to accommodate emergency services for everybody. And in some cases, it doesn't mean we only have one ambulance. It means we have, one ambulance, we have one on standby, and everything costs money. But I know when I call 911, I can count on someone coming to my house to help me out. And that's kind of the bottom line question there. And what we can do for those folks who have helped us all through COVID is just try to make, I'm super excited to see, we just had International Women's Day. I'm super excited to see, applications coming in for both police and fire, but we have to give them a place, to accommodate. That's just the way that it is. That's not really a choice of anyone. That's not my choice, or, it's just what we have to do. So, so there's definitely, but, like Todd said earlier, we have a few things that are going to be paid for. So we're all trying to balance this all out and not, keep going to the polls. I think sometimes people think we're not being fiscally responsible, but in reality, we really are. We're trying to let some debt go away before, we incur more. So we're doing the best we can.
Nope, I agree with everything you're saying. I just think getting that out there to the public and sharing that information is important because they're going to see a big sticker, right? Big sticker price. So,
yep.
All right.
Which on that note, Leah, I was actually with my highlighter going through the debt schedule, and it looks like between the end of last year and this coming year, we've got like 6 items coming right off. I mean, so that's nice to see.
Yep. Yep. And I know people say taxes never go down. And it's not that easy of an equation or a question or, but again, I don't like paying extra taxes, just like the next person doesn't, but I do think we need to have services and schools and everything else. So, we're lucky we got all that CARES money to be able to provide our kids with computers, and all that technology costs money. So, end of my rant.
All right, looks like we got at least 3 members of the planning board. Is that it, Mark, that's coming, or?
I believe so.
Okay.
Barbara may come in, but I texted her just because it was a little early. I haven't heard back. So if you wanted to proceed, we can.
Okay, thank you. All right, so Mark, we want to just introduce the 3 members of the planning board, please?
Yeah, are we opening any kind of a hearing here, or is it just informal?
No, it's all set, no.
Okay, so planning board members are myself, Mark Knox. I have Michelle McEachran present and Jack Lynch present for the planning board for a discussion with the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
Okay, so basically, I had asked, that the planning board attend this meeting to talk about some of their concerns having to do with the planning board, and also have a discussion, about, even though we discussed this a year ago, to talk about hiring a planner. And at that time, we were talking about hiring a consultant, in the interim till we figured out where we're going to go, and that didn't happen. So now what we're talking about is proposing a new town planner, a full-time town planner. And we have provided a very draft, job description of what that planner's responsibilities, would be. So I guess the first thing would be the discussion is that, do you think we need a town planner?
Yeah, I think that's the general consensus of the board. I don't want to say that we've had a specific vote on that, but from talking to individuals, I know that over the years, the planning board has always tried to put $80,000 budget, a line item in the budget to try and get that approved, which you guys, it looks like you may act on, which would be appreciated. I can speak from 2 different land use boards, being on conservation for about 7 years, who has a conservation agent part-time, to be a meeting attending member there and having an agent that's basically the eyes and the ears of the board that goes out, looks at every site, brings back the pertinent information to a hearing. It's so beneficial to have somebody do that for somebody who's working a full-time job and wants to participate, but it's difficult. And I can say right now, I'm sort of acting as the part-time planner for the planning board, which I don't mind. It's good for the town, but it's a lot of work, and I don't think that's sustainable.
I think the other thing too, Mark, is that the planning board and the Board of Appeals are so reliant on Nate Darling, who's a zoning enforcement officer in inspectional services. And I don't have to tell you that, he's extremely busy and he does the best he can to try to help you guys out. But,
Yep.
What this position would do would be, to make sure that everything gets coordinated for both the planning board and the Board of Appeals. To review plans and answer any questions and follow up on stuff and make sure that it's done, presented to the particular board. So that's just as important, about providing some of the resources, for Nate Dowling, which is really badly needed. So
I agree 100% with that, Rich. And I'm sure you already have talked to Nate about that. Because I think that he would be instrumental in crafting the position that he felt would most suit his needs for what he can let go for responsibilities that he doesn't need to take part in, or would trust somebody else to do that. I think that would be instrumental in.
Okay. Any other board members, Michelle or Jack, want to say something?
Yes, this is Jack Lynch. I would just like to say that, I mean, I'm new to the town and I'm new to town management, but I've read the job description thoroughly. And just in my brief experience being on the planning board, I don't see how, and I obviously know Mark and what he's done, and I can't imagine how we can get all of this done without having someone dedicated to doing all of these items that are listed on this resume. I mean, I think it's long overdue and it's much needed.
Okay, thanks, Jack. Michelle?
Yeah, I'll definitely agree with that. I know we've talked about using, outside peer review, and, we have used environmental partners, and that's worked to a certain extent, but we talk about this, proactive versus reactive. And I think a town planner will put us in that position where we can be proactive rather than reactive. And I mean, I don't know how Nate, I don't know when he sleeps. Like he's everywhere. He's so essential to this town. Mark, I don't know where he gets the energy to do what he does. I think, especially when we talk about growing as a town responsibly, this position could definitely, help in a lot of different ways. I think it's a good time to put this into the works.
If I could say one more thing, I mean,
sure.
Just my brief experience on the planning board in looking at what Michelle does, not to mention what Mark Knox does. And I'm not familiar with all of you other gentlemen, what you do and the ladies do, but I don't know how you folks do it. I really don't know how you do it. I mean, this is part-time work. This is volunteer work. I don't know how you do it. I mean, I commend all you folks for putting in the long hours, and Mark is on what, 64 different commissions and all that things. And I don't know how Mark does it. I commend all of you folks for the work you do. So, I mean, I think this town planner position is severely needed.
Thank you. I think the other thing too is that, as you know, we just finished the master plan, and there's a lot of pieces in that master plan that need to be addressed and implemented and followed up on, whether it's zoning issues and so forth and so on. So I think that's critical, as well. Brian, did you want to say something about the town planner position?
Sure. So first of all, welcome planning board. Also, Chairman Knox, just want to say, I've been watching some of your hearings recently, and I think you've been conducting those very professionally. Thank you very much for representing the town in that role as well. I've talked to some of you individually before, and I think, I'm on record saying that I also believe a town planner is something that town should strive to achieve. I know that, if we go looking back to some of our meetings, I think it's back as far as August of last year, even, we have been throwing around these ideas. Do we want a part-time planner? Do we want a full-time planner? We're going to hire Serped, and then we found out they didn't have the time to give us at the moment due to COVID. Obviously it's one of the master plan recommendations, which I'm a big fan of the master plan, and I've told you that before. I think, we're just, all of a sudden it's here. I think, I wasn't quite expecting it to be in front of us just quite yet. And I don't know if, we have all the full story yet. Is the proposed salary adequate for what we need, to get, as the plan here says, a certified planner? Who would it report to? What would that description look like? I just saw it 3 days ago. We got a new town administrator coming in. They might want to, chime in with some ideas or what their experiences have been. So I don't want anybody to think that I'm against a planner role at all. I think that is going to be an exceptional role for the growth the town is going through. I think it's, what is our strategy to get there and how do we accomplish it? I in my head, I don't know if it would fall under the planning board's management, if it would fall under the town administrator's management. I could think of positives of both. But I'll cede my time here, and perhaps Leah has some comments.
So as I said last week, I had the privilege, and I will use that word strongly, of sitting in with, last week, the week before, the 6 potential semifinalists, town administrator semifinalists, and all 6, in one way or another, said that, we are definitely at a crossroads, and that, a couple said they couldn't believe we didn't have a town planner yet, but all 6 suggested that, a town planner is definitely a direction that we should go in. And I'm not against a town planner. It's just this time last year, and of course, I give myself a break and everyone else, because no one anticipated a pandemic. I think we all, have dealt with that pretty well. I think everyone has in town hall. And but this time last year, we were still talking about peer reviews and consulting, and so I think we're on the right track. But again, I don't know when it was, maybe 5 or 6 weeks ago, I had asked Clorinda, the human resource director, to send me some job descriptions so I could start becoming familiar with them. But I just don't know where we start the salaries. Of course, we can do searches, we can compare, but sometimes just finding out what other towns pay their town planner isn't always the best way either. It gives us a range, but it doesn't give us, it's not comparing apples to apples. I mean, someone could have 3 degrees and no experience, and someone may have all experience and no education. So I think we need to be very careful and cautious when we're putting this together. And I believe the, Ari Sky, who is our person that we offered the town administrator position to, I do believe that he has a lot of talents that he can bring here, and leadership skills. And I would really, I'm not saying we waited this long, and I'd like to see the money in the budget, but I'd like to have him in on the search, honestly. So I guess I'm saying I don't want to try to fill this position in the next, few weeks. I would just assume wait for the town administrator to come in. I believe it's a really important position for us right now. I think there's a lot going on. All 6 candidates also said that we have to start making some decisions about our town and what we want to see, and talk about overlay districts. So, I think it's really important to have the input of our new town administrator on this. Thank you.
We can't fill the position until we appropriate the money after July 1st anyways, Leah.
Yeah, I know, but
We can't.
I don't want to run to do job descriptions and everything if we want our new person to give us input. So
Well, the person would certainly have the time for input, because if he's starting the middle of May, all we're doing is trying to get together. Yeah, we want the planning board's input. We also want the Board of Appeals, input about the job description and responsibility. So we're all on the same page. But no way are we going out for a search before he comes gets hired.
okay, good. So I can count on seeing no more emails on that until after.
Well, we have to discuss it as far as the budget process is concerned, that, the funding of it, number one, okay? Number two is that we don't want to wait 2 or 3 months and say, well, now what do we do? We have the opportunity to have people start looking at these job descriptions. I mean, we talked about this a year ago, and, so.
I know we talked about it a year ago, but we didn't talk about it as a finality until most recently. So, you know what, Rich? I'm saying we need a planner. All I'm saying is I don't really want to look at a job description until I can walk into the town administrator's office and say, what is your advice on this? It's pretty simple for me.
I disagree. I think we need to plan for it, even though the job description won't be finalized until he has the opportunity to review it and make suggestions, just like the planning board and Nate Darling. We want to make sure that these people have the opportunity and give them plenty of time to review that before we do anything. And there was no plan to hire or post any position in the next month having to do with this position at all, because we can't until we have the funding.
Well, if there was investigation into, what a good job description is and what a good salary is, I mean, maybe I missed it. I don't believe it was shared with us. So we have an $80,000 number in front of us. Maybe that's great. I don't know. Maybe it's not great. I'm not sure. Maybe it's great for someone who comes in a quarter of the way into the fiscal year and we adjust for the next year. So I'm just a little nervous to jump on board with 80,000, which I think Chairman Knox might have said in his beginning. They've been asking the last couple of years for 80,000. So did that just happen to magically align, or was that a valid number? I certainly wouldn't want to under appropriate money if we learn, oh geez, to get somebody in here certified, it's going to be more.
Okay. Barbara just showed up. Hey, Barbara, I said on the planning board, did you want to give your comments on hiring a town planner, Barbara?
Rich, sorry, I thought we were on for 8:30, so I'm running a little late.
We were.
Running early.
We started a little early, sorry. Mark said it was okay, just so you know. So.
Oh yeah, it's all Mark's fault. I'm just teasing. So, just when we thought about this number over the past couple of years, my cousin is the planner for the island of Nantucket. And so some of the discussion about salary range came from my discussions with her, just so that we would have that feedback. So I can't speak to whether that salary range is still completely appropriate for what we're looking for, but there was a source in reality when we originally threw out that number a year ago. The only thing, Rich, that I think is really important, and I just want to stress this, is that, with the things that were going on with the hospital site, the town of Middleborough's planner actually reached out to us and advocated for their community. And we got what we got. We got the requests from Middleborough, but Middleborough has developments going on too. And Lakeville should have advocacy in those opportunities, the same as we should in other communities like Taunton, because if we're going to be thinking about accepting those kinds of conditions from our neighbors, then I think our neighbors would be probably likely to accept some feedback from us. But with a volunteer board and the things we have going on, it'd be very difficult for us to accommodate those types of research and requests and so forth. So it would be another benefit, Rich, if we could have that resource available to us for some of the things that are happening directly around us.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, anybody from the finance committee want to comment on this?
No, I mean, I guess the 80,000 is still open. So we'll wait to see where that number comes out, but I don't have any other further questions.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else from the planning board all set? Okay.
I have the question for planning if we get there.
Sure.
I mean, to the planning board members, so I don't know if all of you have seen this draft description that just went out. I received it on the 6th, seeing it for the first time. I mean, as I look through this, a lot of the proposed planner activities are directly working with yourselves or the ZBA or working on proposing zoning bylaws and such, things that all fall under you, an independent sovereign elected board. I mean, what are your thoughts on reporting structure? I mean, would you expect the planner to report under you? I think in Middleborough, that's how it works. That's just one example of many, I'm sure. Or would you be comfortable with that person being outside of your boundaries, coming in and making suggestions?
I'm not sure I understand the question of, you're talking about their direct leadership? Their
Yes, so the way the draft description is now, it says directly reports to the town administrator. Would you not expect a planner to be reporting to the planning board?
I honestly think that the administrator role as the leader for the planner would be reasonable. I mean, I think that the communication and everything that's laid out in the description would still be, the position would be created to create communication and the correspondence with the planning board, but if there's an issue or disciplinary action, or I guess I don't understand if there's a gap where the administrator would have a different directive and force that person to do other than what the planning board would want. Is that what you're getting at?
One possibility. I mean, you folks are there to enforce the town's rules as they are.
But
And I just don't know if there's, I'm trying to, honestly, I'm trying to look at the same time here and see if there's rules that govern how planners are paid or appointed. And I have two mouses. I'm going crazy here. Sorry.
Well, I guess there's two
Nieces.
components to that. I mean, we're not going to be the planner's employer. So you'd need to, I guess, define the two differences so that the planning board has control over the actions of based on either the master plan or what the planning board votes on. But as far as hours of operation, specific duties, because in the description you're asking for zoning board of appeals, planning board, and or all other boards to generate the communication required. So it sounds like some of that would have to fall back on a different entity other than just a planning board. But I think you playing devil's advocate, I also don't want to lose control where we have a rogue planner.
Well, ultimately, the decisions still fall to the vote of the elected officials. And the planner, in my view, is a resource for us. Right now, we don't have that resource to call upon. So I don't have a problem with them reporting to the town administrator. We're as a board, I don't think we're in a position to supervise an employee or provide them with the feedback from a day-to-day operations standpoint. But I would expect their, fiduciary responsibility to be to the town and to the elected officials within the community. So I guess that's that.
I mean, by law, you're in a position where you can employ them. Are you saying you don't feel the board as is in a position to employ them, or that you don't feel that you have the right to?
I think the responsibilities of oversight of someone's day-to-day operations would be difficult to execute under the way that we're currently set up. We have elected officials that are rotating in and out every 5 years. And that person would be reporting to somebody whose chairmanship would be changing, right? So
it happens every year with the Board of Selectmen though, too.
Right, where the town administrator would be the constant. There hopefully won't be changing anytime soon.
Well, it's a good point. And I think the caveat is that the job description puts him working for multiple boards, not just the planning board. So would that be the directive of the planning board, or would that be the directive of the town administrator to execute going to a ZBA meeting? Whereas it's not that the planning board doesn't care, but that's not a planning board discipline.
Would this person report to the town administrator, but be into communicating regularly and interacting with all of the other different boards, but taking direction for or reporting to, I mean, not taking direction, but reporting to the town administrator, but obviously acting, and communicating on a regular basis with all of the different boards and interacting with them and what their needs are. I mean,
I think those are the questions that we need to answer.
Yeah.
Well, I would think that also the town planner would be working with the open space committee, trying to help them, with their processes, and doing some of the legwork associated with acquiring properties and helping them identify properties. Also looking at grant opportunities. And if you're interested in buying a piece of land, to deal with the different agencies, the state agencies, the Audubons, or whatever it happens to be, to establish those relationships. And then, of course, also working, whether it's Serped or with the state, for planning, purposes and getting grants. I mean, there's a number of programs that have just been announced, by the state that, we need to take advantage of, that we should take advantage of, or at least find out if we can apply. So I don't think it's just the zoning or the planning side. I think there's a lot of other facets, associated with that. And I think that most of that should be managed, through the town administrator, so everybody understands, what's going on and what are the priorities, for that person, on a daily basis, a weekly basis, and putting some type of plan together that says we need to do this. We have a lot of issues, in that master plan implementation, whether some of us agree with them or disagree with them, but there's a lot of homework, that needs to be done to look at all that stuff and bring it back to the appropriate boards, whether it's the zoning board, the planning board, or whether it's the open space or whatever it happens to be, or the zoning enforcement officer. So, because currently right now,
I agree, but
we rely on Nate to do a lot of those things, and he just can't do it anymore. Just needs help desperately. And so that's what I'm saying the position should be all about.
Well, we keep bringing up
doesn't
Nate.
someone have to supervise this person to make sure that that person is doing the job that they were hired to do, that the town wants them to do, that,
Jack, your audio is awful again. Jack, your audio is awful again.
Yeah, I'll have to call it. Okay.
So I'll just come back to my original statement. I'm not against the planner at all. I think it is something this town needs. I think what I'm frustrated with is that this is kind of thrust in front of us, with very little advance notice that it was coming. What looks like a unilateral decision to get rid of the coordinator position and a number of $80,000, which again might be perfectly fine, but we've not had any evidence put in front of us that that's perfect, too high, too low. Salary survey of others in similar positions, like the things we normally do. So,
well, we haven't got that far yet, Brian. We're just starting to review the job description. We'll give you all Corinda will give you all the analysis for every single, planner. Whereas all you have to do is go out to the MMA site and you can look at, what planners are paying, and that's more by geographic district. That if you're going to pay for a planner on the North Shore versus, out in Westwood or somewhere like that, you're going to have to pay more money. But down here, you might have to have paid, as much money. But I'm sure we're going to do the analysis, but what do you want? Just tell us what you want and Glinda will do it for you.
again, I feel like this was thrust on us at the last moment. That it's the process and the communication that I have the problem with right now.
I disagree with you, Brian. I'm sorry.
Okay.
This has been discussed, okay? It was discussed with the Master Plan Implementation Committee well over a month ago when we said we were going to do it. We've discussed it with the Planning Board a number of times in the last year.
I've been looking through all of our meeting minutes. We have, yes, discussed it a number of times. It has gone from consultant to part-time to a part-time planner / coordinator. We've been all over the board.
Well, here we are. We're talking about it, aren't we?
Yes, while we're doing a budget
Right.
review.
We're talking about it during the budget review with a draft of, I literally, Clorinda sent me a couple of job descriptions because I was just trying to acquaint myself with what a planner does. And we just got this, I'm sorry, Rich, I can't get something on the 6th with all the other work I have to do and read through it and then come in and say, okay, great. I think we need a little bit more. Maybe you and Clorinda have been discussing it, but I haven't been discussing it. Clorinda, I talked to her briefly back in January, I think, and I said, we talked a lot about planners. I said, do you think I don't have the time? And she's very gracious. And she sent me a few job descriptions. And I think there just needs to be a little bit better communication going on here. I was kind of shocked to see $80,000. I was expecting to see the town coordinator line in the budget,
Okay.
not.
All right, here, go. We'll do this right now so we can get this over with, okay? You guys make a motion to remove the $80,000 for the town planner out of the budget, if that's what you want. Go ahead and do it. It was a 3-member board here.
Right, there's a 3-member board. What happened to the town coordinator position? I mean,
Tell me what you want. Tell me what you want in the budget, okay? I put all the budgets together. You were given all the information about the budgets. I got zero input having to do with the budgets, except the technology budget from Brian. Everything else, I put everything together. You've been
you know what,
given
Rich,
copies.
I'm not gonna discuss this right now. And
Well, you have to make a decision in the next couple of weeks, because we
right,
have to
and I'll
get
make
the
it in the
warrant.
next couple of weeks. I don't have to make it tonight, plain and simple. I haven't, you know,
But what do you want there? Tell me what you want.
what do I want? I want to have the input of a town administrator on what we should be doing. I don't want to vote on a job description for a town planner in the next few weeks.
I'm not asking you to do that.
Then
The
why do I
question-
have
the
this
question-
job description?
So everybody would have the opportunity to look at it.
May I say something, Rich?
Yeah.
This is Barbara with Planning Board. So just to refresh everybody's memories, I worked on the master plan committee back in 2000, okay, 2004, 2005. When that got finished up, one of the leading things we all knew was that we needed a planner. It was very clearly outlined in the long-term plan. The master plan implementation committee has carried that idea forward, and it's been one of the ongoing goals. Now, since I've been on the planning board, I think this is my 3rd year, it's becoming increasingly evident that those of us that are working in this capacity, we need that professional support. We need it right now. We don't need it retroactively. We need it proactively. And looking forward in the next 10 years, if we don't take action, our community is going to change a lot. And we can't rely on people like myself who are volunteering our time to bring that level of expertise that somebody in my position needs to have that advice coming our way. So, I don't think that it's new to people in town that a town planner is necessary. We've been asking for it for a very long time. And last year when we sat in front of you and Zink and I talked with you about the budget, we understood we were going to be going into fiscal, front winds or whatever you want to call it, headwinds. And we thought that it would be appropriate to use a dedicated resource. In practice, and that was a great idea a year ago, in practice, it's not realistic. We need somebody that we can have ongoing conversations with who can help us develop a longer term strategy. And it needs to be something that I would like to see somebody with a lot more experience, not somebody that just got out of college, but somebody who's had municipal experience on how to deal with some of these real life problems that are highly political. That's my 2 cents. Thank you for the time.
No, Barbara, I appreciate that. You and I have, had a couple of talks, and I don't think neither Brian nor I disagree that we need a planner. I just think that we've never made a formal, and in fact, I think maybe just because Rich is at town hall, he frequents the offices more than Brian and I do. And Brian and I are basically trying to keep up with some of this information. And, just like the plans I got yesterday, over the weekend for the new storage facility, I need more than like 2 days sometimes. It's a communication thing. It has nothing to do. I absolutely think we need a planner. I've been trying to, talk to people for a year now on how to make this happen. And I've put so much time and effort into it. And all of a sudden I see a budget and it's got an $80,000 line item that I've had zero input on. So I don't know. Right now, I can tell everyone probably can see I'm distracted. I've seen town planners out there for $90,000. I've seen them for $96,000. I would like some input in the salary. It should have been an agenda item.
And that's where I'm coming to as well, Barbara. I'm sold on having the position. You guys don't have to sell me on the need. It absolutely is needed. I don't want to set them up for failure or set the town up for failure. And maybe we're not. but we haven't even had that opportunity to figure that out. So normally we go through these things, we get analysis on, you know, what we might want to pay, what we want for qualifications.
I
got
think
nothing.
we should have had this conversation with the planning board prior to the budget meeting, plain and simple. I mean, you know, we're usually quite a cohesive board, but I think that I thought I was the only one that missed something because I've just been, you know, going like crazy. And apparently, you know, Brian didn't know it was going to be in there either. So that's all that's it. There's no voting to be done. And that's it. I'm done. And actually, I really am in a lot of pain, so I have to excuse myself and I do have to leave the meeting right now. My apologies.
Mark, are you still on there?
I
Yeah,
am.
Mark, go ahead.
So I think everybody's sort of on the same page of where we want to end. The only question that I have, and I think the planning board's willing to work with the Board of Selectmen to try and keep this process moving along. You know, we appreciate all your support. I think that to Brian's point, the thing you need to do is make the budget number match the job description to make sure you're getting and putting in the budget what you need. So if there's more discussion and it needs to be had with the planning board, me or Barbara, anybody could attend. We're happy to help or be talked to outside of a meeting as an individual.
Yeah, I'd love to see the analysis that was already done. Just shoot it over an email. Done deal. I'd love to just take a review at it. I mean, this is a budget review. Todd, if you're still with us, I mean, nothing here is set in stone yet, right? We've got time to work things out if we need to.
Absolutely.
I think just, you know, it was the shock of we had an entire employment change in our office we weren't expecting, hadn't voted on, and we want to make sure the number's right. We want it to be successful.
When we came up with that number of $80,000 when last year, that was a ballpark. You know, that wasn't, we didn't know that we would get it approved. We were, you know, I think Clarinda would probably be the best person to give us a range, Brian, in terms of whether or not that the position is, the figure that we're providing is actually accurate. That was a figure that we came up with a year ago based on kind of an eyeball look at it and a sense of, you know, talking with, like I said, my cousin. I don't think that's a reliable analysis for the town. It was a starting place. So perhaps the human resources person is the best person to give us a better number. My only thing is, I'll just stress this again, we need somebody with some level of experience. I don't think a recent grad is going to do it for us.
Oh, and I agree with you. And that was one of the, we went through that process for the town administrator as well, where we said we wanted somebody with a solid amount of experience, and we looked at the salary and we made a choice to increase the range that we were willing to go to. And I think we were very happy with that outcome, you know, pending contract being signed. And I want to set you guys up for similar success. So what can we do to get there?
If we get 80 and the position calls for, let's say Clarinda does the analysis for once we have a final definition of what we're looking for, can it be bumped up if we needed it to be? Can it be adjusted?
We're going to look at Todd and see what the budget looks like.
Yes. The short answer is yes.
The first thing is that, go ahead, no, Todd, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, we could amend it at the fall town meeting, or, you know, if it was a minor adjustment, I'm sure the finance committee would assist us with a transfer during the year outside of town meeting if needed.
If you notice the job description, as we always put job descriptions, have salary ranges on that. There's no salary ranges, you know, on that job description. And the reason why is because we hadn't determined what the salary range was going to be. And put a placeholder in the budget that can be changed, can be deleted, can be increased, or whatever. So everybody's hung up on the $80,000. You had to put something in there because we have to put this budget together, get a balanced budget together. And if it's something that you decide you don't want to do, hey, that's fine too. But
That's the number.
that's only a placeholder. And then both the Board of Selectmen, if you look at your budget books, both the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee have to make a recommendation that gets put in on the town meeting. So that process hasn't happened yet on any budget at this point. So I don't know what the hangup is about the $80,000. The
It's not
$80,000
just the number, Rich. It's the number, it's the process, it's how we got here, it's removing another
Fine.
role without
Okay.
even asking Leah or I.
Fine,
It's
that's
not just the
fine.
number.
Okay, fine.
Well,
Do
there
what you
was
want. I
also
don't care what you
discussions in the
do.
past about what was the funding source going to be. There was an idea that perhaps, some of the salary could be paid through planning board fees. Did we look into
Mark
that?
is addressing that. Mark, aren't you addressing that issue too?
Yep, we're trying to, but again, it's sort of one of those, what are we trying to make up for? And again, I'm not trying to be evasive, but yeah, we were trying to increase our fees to cover the cost, or at least to offset the cost if there was a salary put on the books for the planning, or a planner.
But Brian, in full disclosure, on our proposed revised fee structure, I don't believe that it would cover, Mark, correct me if you think I'm wrong, but I don't think our fee collection would cover a third of the,
Not based on the amount of development that happens in town with the disciplines that we're looking to put a fee on. No.
Right.
the capital expense.
Or could it offset some? I don't know. I don't know if Todd, if a position can be funded partially out of general and partially subsidized through fees or not.
Sorry, can I chime in? It sounds like the dollar amount is a moving target, and it will be what it is, and we can talk about it when we know what it is. It sounds like this is more a procedural issue that the selectmen have. Is there any way we can get past that and you guys can talk about this offline? Because it doesn't seem like we're really getting anywhere with this.
No, we're going to have to. We already lost Leah, so.
Okay. We're just kind of going in circles right now, so.
Okay, I guess we're all set. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
AI.
I need
Camera, aye.
to close the finance committee meeting. I'll
Yes,
make a
please.
motion to close
Thank
the
you.
finance committee meeting at 8:57 PM. Can I have a second?
Eric Costan, second.
Adam?
Aye, in favor.
George?
Aye.
Larry?
Aye.
Darren? Aye. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good night, everybody.